All right, aloha and welcome. How's everybody today? Good to see you all, and thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules, especially our Lieutenant Governor here. We are so excited to have you here. This is our third annual, Innovations and Sanitation Convening. The first one was put on by the Gates Foundation 3 years ago, and that really helped get us going. And we have a lot of sponsors here and funders and tech partners with whom we couldn't do all this. So we're going to jump right in. I really want to thank our, first of all, our funders who believed in us from the very beginning, starting with the Castle Foundation. And we have Eric and Mitch here. We really appreciate their support. And then we also have Hawai'i Community Foundation and Ulupono, who have specifically helped us put on this event. And then we have sponsors for this particular event this year, our partners at Pictor, and Dennis Teranishi is back here in the back. Thank you, Dennis, for all your support. We'll tell you more about the partnership. And then we have Cloacina here. So we have, where's Chris from Cloacina, a new sponsor. Thank you for joining us. And then we have our tech partners. And this is what we're about, bringing innovative new technology to Hawaii. And so we have Fuji Clean USA. We have Richard and Dennis in the back. You can raise your hands. All right. And then we have our newest partner, the folks from Arinco. If you guys can raise your hands back here. We have. They're going to give a presentation that we're really looking forward to. And then we have Ridge to Reefs here and FAL, all the way from the East Coast. And then finally, we have folks from Elgin here. We have Scott Moore, all the way from the East Coast. Give it up. And then Pacific Current is also a sponsor this year. I don't know, is Evan here from Pacific Current yet? We have some people on the way, but we really appreciate all your support. And to set off this third convening, we are going to invite our newest employee, Shayla, to do a little Oli, to just begin. So we're kind of grounded in place and recognizing our host culture. So Shayla, you want to come up? Let's give her a welcome. Shayla is our new GROW Fellow through the UHC grant program. So we're very grateful for their support as well.
All right, can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay, so I'll be reading something from Hawai'i Law of the Aloha Spirit. It's from chapter 5 of the Hawai'i Revised Statutes, and it goes like this. So Aloha Spirit is the coordination of mind and heart within each person. It brings each person to self. Each person must think and emote good feelings to each other. These are traits of character that express the charm, warmth, and sincerity of Hawaii's people. It was the working philosophy of Native Hawaiians and was presented as a gift to the people of Hawaii. Aloha is more than a word of greeting or farewell. It is a salutation. Aloha means mutual regard and affection and extends warmth and caring with no obligation in return. Aloha is the essence of relationships in which each person is important to every other person for collective existence. Lastly, aloha means to hear what is not said, to see what cannot be seen, and to know the unknowable. And that's it for that one. But in addition, I would like to also share with you folks an olelo no'eau. It is the olelo no'eau number 203, and it reads, "A'ohe pau ka'ike I ka halau ho'okahi." And what that translates to in English is that one can learn from many sources. So I thought that this olelo no'eau perfectly describes our convening today. With converting cesspools here in Hawaii, it is a large task and definitely one that can't be done single-handedly. It will take many sources, many partners, and many hands to help introduce and establish wastewater technologies to be used here in Hawaii. I'd like to mahalo all of you for being here today and hand the mic back over to Stuart. Thank you, folks.
And as you know, this is a very, I would say, the most important issue. I'm a little biased in Hawaii, for two reasons, the cesspool issue, number one and number two. So we can't forget, this is the thing that brings us all together here. We can't get throughout the day with a lot of poo puns, so we're just going to be like, dropping them throughout the presentation, so to speak. So we're going to have presentations coming up. We're having an address by Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, which we're very excited about. Later on the day, we're going to have Senator Chris Lee give some comments as well. And we want you guys to really feel like you are part of this, because it's going to end in discussions. And, as the Olelo talked about, we need everybody in this. It really is going to take breaking out of our silos for policy reasons, for financial reasons, and for innovative technology to really transform the state, because we were the last in the state to ban cesspools, and we've got a lot of work ahead of us. We were the last in the country to ban cesspools, the last state, by almost 3 decades. So we're playing catch up, but we have a unique opportunity to kind of move forward and become a leader in this field. All right, I'll give it to Christina.
All right, thank you, everyone. My name is Christina Comfort, and I'm the program manager at WAI. And I'm just going to go through a brief introduction of the issue and a little bit of the pollution problems that we're facing due to cesspools in Hawaii. So just to quickly introduce you to our organization, WAI, which stands for Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations, has a mission to protect water quality, reduce sewage pollution, and restore healthy watersheds by providing innovative, affordable, and eco-friendly solutions to waste and wastewater management for all people. And our vision is that we're helping Hawaii communities and homeowners navigate the process, transition to better systems that will really help our environment and be efficient and sustainable for the community. WAI has 5 pillars that we approach this mission and vision from, and these include innovative technology, which is a big focus of our convening today, talking about lots of different innovative technologies that can be used to replace cesspools in a more advanced and efficient way. We also think a lot about financial resources. How are we going to gather the funds to make this happen, get grants out to homeowners who need assistance with this conversion process? Policy and advocacy is a huge, important piece of the whole picture, and making sure that we have the environment set up in our state and county governments to make sure that we can get this transition done. Outreach and education is one of our pillars. So we do a lot of work reaching out to communities, holding town halls, holding events to raise awareness about the issue. And finally, pilot projects, getting new types of technology on the ground and testing them out here in Hawaii. Here's our team. We've already met Stuart, who gave a great introduction. He's our executive director. John Anner, our managing director, is also here from the East Coast. And I'm Christina, and then Yoko is here managing our virtual attendees. He's our senior project coordinator. Sierra Termera is our project coordinator through Kupa Aina Corps. And we've also met our newest employee, Shayla Waiki, who's our new program coordinator. So just a brief review of the cesspool issue. There are over 88,000 cesspools in Hawaii that discharge up to about 53 million gallons per day of effluent. And you can see on this map, all of the red dots represent a home or a building that has a cesspool. So you can see there's areas all throughout the islands, and they're really dense in a lot of areas, both on the coastline and over drinking water aquifers. The amount of effluent that we're talking about from these cesspools is equivalent to about the same volume as 80 Olympic-sized swimming pools of sewage per day. So just to give you a visual, this is a lot of wastewater effluent going into the ground every single day. So this is kind of just a flow graphic to help understand how cesspools impact our water resources in Hawaii. So these 88,000 cesspools are discharging waste into the ground. And cesspools don't do any particular treatment. They're essentially just a hole in the ground, and the wastewater goes directly into the ground from there. In many areas, the cesspools are close to groundwater or over areas of fractured rock or sandy soils where percolation can happen really quickly into the groundwater. There are even areas in the Big Island where we know that some areas have wells with 25% to 50% of the drinking water in the wells testing positive for fecal indicator bacteria. So we can really see how this pollution is reaching our aquifer. And then from the groundwater, this pollution also goes out into streams and the ocean through groundwater seeps, where it impacts the environment. Some of these environmental and public health hazards include nutrient pollution going onto the coral reef, which causes invasive algae to overgrow the corals and degrades the habitat. This also affects fish populations, and it can also includes other types of pollution that can lead to coral disease. On the public health side, as I mentioned, drinking water pollution over aquifers is a problem. And with increased amounts of nitrates in drinking water, you can start to see nitrate-associated cancers. They see this in Long Island, and that's something that we want to try to get ahead of and avoid as much as possible in Hawaii, of course. Also, pathogens in recreational waters. Probably a lot of you guys who live here have probably had this experience of going swimming in dirty water and getting sick to your stomach, getting some kind of infection, and those can definitely be caused by sewage pollution. I'm just going to take you through a couple areas in the Hawaiian Islands that have really clear pollution problems. And this is just to kind of give you a sense of the magnitude of the problems in some particular neighborhoods. The first area to look at is Kahalu'u here on Oahu. This is an area where Surf Riders Blue Water Task Force has been monitoring for about 3 or 4 years. And we take biweekly samples. I'm a volunteer with the Blue Water Task Force. We take biweekly samples for fecal indicator bacteria. And at this site, 86% of the samples we've taken over years have been above the closure threshold for fecal indicator bacteria. So this is a really chronically polluted neighborhood, lots of cesspools in this neighborhood. And lots of people use this area too. There's a boat ramp there. There's a canoe club that's right there. People go fishing on the reefs. So we can see really clearly how this impacts both the ecosystem and the community. Moving over to the Big Island of Hawaii in Pu'oko. This is an area on the North Kona coast where there are a lot of homes with cesspools and failing septic tanks, failing ATUs that are right on the coast on lava rock. And dye tracer studies from the University of Hawaii at Hilo have showed that after a toilet flush, it can take as little as 6 hours for the dye they put in the toilet to get onto the reef. So as you can imagine, there's absolutely no treatment happening. That's direct sewage going right onto the reef. And it's a really beautiful reef ecosystem, a lot of diversity there. And this is just an example of how the reef health can be really impacted by these pollution problems. And with that, I'm just gonna start transition into some of our updates and progress since our last convening. So the first thing I want to mention is that there is a new prioritization tool. So for those of you who have been following the cesspool issue, you know that in 2017, there was priority areas that were designated by the Department of Health. There were 14 priority areas down to 13 now because one was paved over by lava flow. But there were lots of areas that were not categorized yet. And through a really massive effort through some University of Hawaii researchers and the Cesspool Conversion Working Group, we have a new prioritization tool that has categorized every cesspool in Hawaii. So they used a lot of different factors, including soil type, weather, ecosystem potential for recovery, beach use data, all kinds of different factors to categorize the risk of each individual cesspool. One thing that this prioritization tool does not include is water quality data. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that it's something to use, but then also we need to look at our data on the ground. So I'm just going to quickly show the maps. You can see on Oahu, the North Shore is identified as a problem area, the entire North Shore. On Maui, there's areas in upcountry and also on the west side and on the North Shore as well that are very high priority. Big Island, Kona Coast, Hilo, Puako area, you can see in the northwest area up there. And Kauai, lots of areas of high priority. So this is exciting and just a new tool to help us decide where to focus finances and effort for cesspool conversions. And I will pass it back over to Stuart to share a little bit about our technology updates.
Thank you, Christina. We're very lucky to have Christina's in the process of getting her PhD at UH and is one of the top water quality researchers and scientists in Hawaii. So this is under the reason that underlies everything we do. It's about water quality. And since many of us are surfers, ocean lovers, divers, that's one of our motivating factors. I'm going to talk briefly about our tech partners who are not here today, just to give you a brief overview, and then we'll hear from the ones who are. And Cinderella was the first group that we met when I was in, Chris Lee and I went and gave a talk at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Reinvented Toilet Expo in Beijing, one of those places where you find yourself with, what are we doing here? How did we get here? But they were fascinated to hear about the situation in Hawaii. And we met these folks, a Norwegian company called Cinderella, and they were just very persistent and wanted to get involved and help out in Hawaii. And so we introduced the first incinerating toilets to Hawaii. There are now more than 32 across the islands. We've been very successful. And we have some that are on farms or they're off-grid. And they're propane powered, and then some that are electric powers for in-homes. We have a number of government agencies that have bought these. Instead of putting in all the plumbing and everything, a leach field for a new toilet, you can just put in one of these incineration toilets. They're waterless, and they're just an amazing company. We had nothing but great feedback from them. And we were also very lucky to establish the first one. I have to thank Mitch Dollier for this. At our first Innovations in Sanitation Convening, he's like, I've got the perfect place for this technology. And I was almost like, I know what you're thinking. He said, Coconut Island, Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology. And it was the perfect fit. They embraced it. They love it. They went and got another incineration toilet there. And then this has been really exciting. We applied for a Kauai Innovation Grant to transform a home that was on a cesspool in Kapa'a, replace all the toilets with incineration toilets, and then do a gray water recycling system. This is the first of its kind in the world. The people in Norway at Cinderella were just absolutely thrilled to hear about this. And I really want to give a round of applause for Yoko, who designed this. Because not only award-winning, but it's a really brilliant idea. And
conference now.
Something's playing in the background. So we have a gray water recycling system that does that. And then one of our other partners, James, where's James? You can raise your hand, from Vi Home. He's designing a system that is kind of, it's a passive aerobic treatment that you can just use these panels, and it uses algae to treat the nutrients, and it circulates on its own. And so that's in development right now, which is really exciting. And then we have Emily from Elemental Accelerator here, and they've been a great partner. They had a deal day kind of competition, and we were selected along with Cambrian to try their containerized MBR technology here. It's decentralized, it's neighborhood scale. That's where we think we really need to go in Hawaii. Municipal systems, these plants are just too big, too expensive, and you have to build sewer lines to transport all the waste. And so we have been working with them. We have the first system that went in Pacific Biodiesel on the Big Island. And we're looking at some other areas across the island. This year, and they are part of the cohort as Elemental Accelerator. And then this year, the applications are winding down, and we're partnering with a group called Wasted that believes you should never waste these products, these the waste, because throughout history, they've always been reused. And it's only in the last 150 years that we've kind of gotten away from that these have lots of nutrients. And so they're looking to replace the porta potty, which I think we can all agree would be a good idea if we can find something that's a little more pleasant experience or upgraded. And they kind of have given us some credit for creating a square partnership where you have elemental accelerator, with the funding and bringing these innovative technologies, and then you have the technology company that's applying, and then you have the customer on the other end, but they were finding there was a missing piece, and that's the local partner that can help these pilot projects move forward. And so we've become a local partner for some of these companies. This is a company called Biomass Controls, and I met them at the Gates Foundation as well. And they do wastewater sludge. This is the thing, and I'm going to nerd out here, that I literally wake up in the middle of the night going, this is the technology that's going to change everything. Paul Hawken in his book Drawdown says the production of biochar, taking that sludge, which we now, once it's dewatered, we truck in big trucks, and it's still a lot of liquid. And Josh knows this, on the Big Island at Hilo, they have to truck it all the way across the mountain to the other side, to just take it to a landfill where it continues off gassing. It has so many greenhouse gases. Not the way to do things, especially when, and this is a proven technology, you can burn that waste, turn it into biochar, 95% removal of all pharmaceuticals and chemicals of emerging concern and contaminants. And it can become a really useful soil amendment, and it's also a carbon sink. So we're super excited about this. This could be a game-changing technology. And when you add up Cambrian's ability to, do the MBR treatment, and there are other folks here today that do similar. Closina does the same. Then you can dewater it, and the water can be so clean that it can be used for irrigation or landscaping. And then we could take the sludge and incinerate it using pyrolysis, produce this biochar, and that can be put on the land. It's not only great as a soil amendment and increases fertility, but it's also, as I mentioned, a carbon sink, and it also reduces runoff and sedimentation. So we're looking at combining all of these technologies in a place like Ma'alaya, which Kelly King will talk about later. This would be one of the first of its kind in the entire world. So Hawaii could literally go from being the last to convert cesspools to being an international leader in this field. And that's what really gets me excited about what we're doing here. We have done a number of town hall meetings across the state, working with legislators like Chris Lee, who's been kind of there from the beginning, and Representative Nicole Lowen. And we do town halls in these communities where Christina pointed out the maps, where those priority areas are. And so we just need to educate them. How many people knew about the cesspool issue 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Yeah, this is a room that's pretty educated. You're invested, but most of the public had no idea. And we've talked to people that just literally I still am not sure what a cesspool is and why they're bad. And so we've done all these town halls and getting really good reactions. We were afraid at first that they might be throwing eggs at us, because they're like, you're the guys who are making us convert our cesspools. But when we explain the health risk and the environmental risk and the opportunities, then people get excited. And so that's been really great to see. And we also have a bioreactor garden training that we're doing with Ridge to Reefs. And we've done, how many of those so far, Val?
2 so far.
2 so far. And then we have 2 more coming up. And we're going to be doing one on Kauai and one on Maui at Pukalani this Friday. And then we have a Clean Water Hui that Christina heads up. And these are really talented volunteers who are helping us with water quality issues and all the other issues that we're working with. And we'd love for any of you to join and help us with that. This is part of the community outreach that we've done. I got a little ahead of myself. These are the upcoming ones that are, if you know anybody in these areas that would like to come, please let us know and we can reach out to them. Again, this is a passive technology, and we have up to $20,000 to offer local homeowners. So if you know somebody in upcountry Maui or on Kauai, and more, we're piloting it in the drier areas of the island, please let us know, because we want to help them out. It needs to be a 2 or 3 bedroom home and generally in the Leeward area. This is where we're getting into the big stuff and really exciting. I started working with Rachel Solomsas, the chancellor of the Hawaii Community College over here, 2 years ago, talking about once the pandemic hit, Hawaii went from having the lowest unemployment rate in the entire country to having the highest because of our overdependence on tourism. And that was a major crisis. I mean, besides all the other health aspects that we went through, there were a lot of people off work. So we started working on this Work for Water initiative, realizing that this mandate can convert 88,000 cesspools is eventually going to require, and we did some studies on this, it could be up to 2,000 new jobs. And these are green jobs that pay well. And they don't have the ups and downs of the boom and bust cycles of construction or the tourism industry as it comes and goes. And so we're really excited about that. We worked with Pictor and our partners at Work for Water to apply for a congressional earmark. And it hasn't been officially announced yet, but we can share amongst you all, we were approved for that earmark to bring money to Hawaii to train people to help create this new workforce, which is super exciting. Yeah. And then they also got a National Science Foundation grant to extend our earmark to create permanent courses so we can really start training people and bring young people and displaced workers into this area. And we're working with DHHL as well. We have Nancy McPherson here from DHHL, and that's exciting for job opportunities. This legislative session was looking grim at points. We had a cesspool scandal that many of you probably read about. And so we, the legislator, I think, really rallied and came together, and we were able to pass 3 bills. And I'm just going to kind of focus on the first one. HB 2195 will provide grants of up to $20,000 to low and moderate income homeowners to help convert their cesspools. That is huge because the price of converting your cesspools is, can go anywhere from 25 to 45, even 50,000, depending on the soil type and the amount of bedrooms and the difficulty of the landscape, if there's a lot of slope and such. So that's very exciting, but we're going to need a lot more of that because most people, our surveys show, cannot afford to do this on their own, which is why this is one of the most important things that we're talking about. And this is what our discussions are going to be when we do breakout sessions, financial resources. We really need to help homeowners. Right now, it's kind of on the homeowners themselves to front these costs, but we're in the middle of a historic opportunity. The largest infrastructure bill in American history has been passed, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, otherwise known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And that is huge. I mean, this could create and bring millions and millions of dollars to Hawaii to help homeowners with this conversion process. And that creates jobs, opportunities. So it's really exciting. And these are some of the sources that we're looking at. Clean Water State Revolving Fund, working with the EPA on that, and the Department of Health, the wastewater branch. And we are looking at also the state level grants, EPA grants, and other USDA rural development grants. So very exciting opportunities, but we also need to work to make those happen. And sometimes, folks, it could be as simple as literally hiring 3 grant writers, to do these. And that small investment could bring in tens, if not hundreds of millions over the next 5 years. So we can't miss this opportunity. And that's why it's a real pleasure to introduce our next speaker, whom you all know, our Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, because he, during the pandemic, we were very lucky to have someone in leadership who is a doctor, an epidemiologist, and understands these issues, and is not shooting blindly in the dark, and really guided us through that. So we're very excited to hear him today, because he also recognized early on that this mandate to convert cesspools is not only just a huge financial challenge, but it's also an opportunity to create jobs, to stimulate the economy, and really help protect our environment. So it really is an honor to bring my friend up, Lieutenant Governor Josh Green.
Aloha, everybody. So it's interesting because when you're involved in the process I am right now, which is everyone asking you what you're going to do for the state for the next few years, and they ask you about economic diversification, it's very difficult to suddenly say we should legalize marijuana, have a green fee, and have anaerobic treatment units statewide, because they don't necessarily get it when you say that. But really, we are entering a new era. We're entering an era that things are going to look very different for the environment. There's going to be a critical focus on climate change and environment. Chris has been leading us for now a decade or more in this area. And as has Stuart. We met in 2004 when Stuart pinged me and said, "You're running for state representative. I want to recycle some batteries. And I'd like to help you." And didn't know where he was coming from, but I just knew there was an environmentalist in my midst. And so you accumulate these relationships and these new ideas come. And what I really want to share is we should not be shy at all about these opportunities. More than ever, we're going to be focused on water. I think it's pretty clear. We have recently dealt with what is a fairly disastrous situation with Red Hill. It's going to require incredible partnerships to literally dig our way out of this problem. Without water, we are not going to be able to keep the people here that we love. We won't be able to build enough housing. Without water, we won't be able to take care of their health. And needless to say, without clean water and a change in our approach to purifying our water, Hawaii will not be what it could be. And it's going to be incredibly problematic if we don't take it up. So when Stuart started bending my ear maybe 2 years ago already, he said, "I know you're talking about COVID quite a lot, but there are a couple other problems that we should face." I started to listen, and I was super impressed because the moment that he shared with me the sheer magnitude of this project, I did as he has explained, and he did blow the punchline in the best of ways. I saw an incredible opportunity for us because this is going to happen. We are going to actually make this conversion happen. And in my mind, I immediately saw an opportunity in many ways the size of our solar movement. And I don't want to conflate solar to dealing with clean water, but I do want to say this. When you see the number of jobs and economic opportunities that arose because we finally got ahead of the solar question and began to create energy that we needed so badly, you could see how you could twist it and turn an economy in the right direction with a good plan, a good clean energy plan. And I see the same thing from this challenge. I really see thousands and thousands of jobs that are going to be pretty high tech, that are going to generate a lot of good earning for people that need to afford houses. And come rain or come shine, people's poop and pee is going to need to be managed. And this is a really extraordinary opportunity. I don't think many people are going to be able to wrap their minds around this psychologically really quickly. But when they see the longevity of this economic opportunity and then they see the critical improvement on our environment, I think it's going to be extremely popular. And so it was so popular that we started talking about it as one of the very likely additional legs to the stool of our economic program here in the state of Hawaii. It has all the best things that we would hope for. It has the ability to bring young people into a field that is outside of tourism, which is a good thing. It has the opportunity to bring a lot of federal dollars. And finally, it has the ability to inspire the imagination for a clean environment for the future. So I just think it's absolutely fantastic. I think that it is the opportunity that we're going to seek for economic growth. And I think this is something that we should not be shy about when we go to the federal government and ask for really significant support. Because in this era, as we deal with the Navy, as we deal with Red Hill, as we look to get support for not just cleaning our water, but also housing, new clean water sources, this is an infrastructure piece. And this infrastructure piece could really drive a tremendous amount of our growth. So again, I'll come back to where I began. I think we're going to do some things that are very green as far as technology goes. The pun is not intended at all, but I do think if we have a green fee and we get a grip on what we're going to do as far as the footprint, our climate footprint here in the state of Hawaii, we do that. If we go where I do believe we're going to go with agriculture, and I think hemp and legalization of marijuana is very likely to happen, but will generate revenues. And then finally, a major environmental move for clean water. I think we're starting to look at least kind of the seedlings of a major economic recovery and diversification plan. So I'm so grateful to get to spend a few minutes with you. I'm particularly grateful to see you, Stuart, and everyone around the table. And I think this is the creative way to go as we begin to diversify our economy. So, hey, thank you guys very much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Josh Green. So we're gonna move on to.
Fast.
Oh, sorry, Lieutenant Josh Green. So next, we're gonna move on to our technology partners. They're all gonna have about a 15-minute presentation, and then we'll save the questions for after. We'll have about 5 minutes for Q&A. So our first partner is gonna be Elgin. It's a veteran-owned company based out of Connecticut, I believe. Connecticut, right? And so they produce an innovative advanced septic system that reduces nutrient pollution, and it is a passive system. They also have recently donated a system to a local veteran in KL that was successfully installed last year. So here's Scott.
Stuart, those incinerator toilets, they're a hot item.
Yes.
Come on. I didn't have anything prepared. He kind of set me up. So I'm going to talk about I'm Scott Moore from Elgin Corporation. And my job at Elgin is to go out and do all the training in all the new states. I'm the technical development lead. I bring everything online, make sure it's working, then I turn it over to somebody else. So today we're going to talk about the Elgin GSF, the geotextile sand filter. We'll start out with some of the history, the pilot project that's here. Just mentioned some of the science behind the system, how the GSF works, installation types, and if I don't run over, we'll do real quickly installation procedures. It's a very easy product to install. So in 1970, Joe Glasser founded the company making prefabricated drainage product. He's a World War II veteran. He was a navigator on a bomber in World War II. He was shot down once in Germany, once in France, had to make his way back. He's still alive today. He's in a home now. He's 97, but he's still out there kicking. I think he's the last person from his Army Air Squadron that's still alive. So we have over 100,000 systems worldwide. We install every province of Canada, British Columbia. We just picked up Puerto Rico. We have Tasmania, Australia, Sweden, and Ireland, and 34 states in the continental US. So in keeping with our roots, we like to hire veterans. The last 3 years in a row, we won the award for Hire Vets, the Platinum Award. They just started that 5 years ago. Actually, we've won it the last 3. We have a veteran technical team. On the top left is Jim King, our president. He's an Army veteran. Eric Daniels was in the Navy. He's the supervisor of all the technicians on the team. That's me on the right there. I was in the Army stationed in Germany in the 80s. Lee Shamblin. Oh, one picture got turned sideways. That's Dustin Fitzpatrick, Marine Corps. Drew Nicolai is one of our newest. He just had a baby last night. And Valerie Jacks, also United States Army. This was the giveaway system that we installed last year. Sergeant Jarvis Valera, Vi put on a promotion, and what did you have? Did they submit letters, Stuart?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this was the person that ended up winning. He has a house already on the property, and then he's building a second one for his parents, I believe. Here's a picture of the system going in. We installed about 2 feet of cinder soil, and you can see we had to drill through a bunch of rock. He had about 8 inches of topsoil. And the guy that installed it was a one-man operation. So he would get on the backhoe, chisel out all the rock, load it all into the truck, take the truck down to the quarry, drop it off, come back. He was doing everything. This guy did it in a couple of weeks by himself. And it's hard to tell from that picture, but it's down about 5 feet. That's after the picture on the left, the 2 feet of the cinder soil that's in there. And then on the right, it's various stages of completion. On the far right are the modules without the gray fabric over the top of them. Once you have the gray fabric over the top, you can fill sand in between, up even with the top of it, and then cover it up. But that was a good project, went pretty well. This one is in Wisconsin. We like to help out veterans or veteran organizations. Camp American Legion, they have 16 cabins on a lake, and we donated a system for one of the cabins that had to be replaced, their septic system. They allow veterans to go there with their families and stay for free. They don't charge them for anything. They take them out fishing, they can do canoeing, whatever they want. It's out in the middle of the woods. It's a beautiful place to go. So we thought that was a worthy donation for us. And also, if you come across any disabled veterans, give us a call because we always donate to disabled veterans, 100%. Some of the science behind the system. So in 1977, these guys decided that it's actually the septic tank effluent that causes the soil clogging and defines the absorption rate. And we'll get into what really happens out there. This guy, Locke, you see Croft, Locke, and Healy, he's actually the person, Rain Locke, that designed the GSF. So in 1995, he said having that GSF, the geotextile fabric, will improve your absorption rate because that fabric will build a biomat. That biomat will catch all the suspended solids and keep those solids from going into the septic field, into the native soil and clogging that soil. And there's some other ones about sidewall bottom area, except effluent. And then Tyler, Converse, and Keys, these guys are pretty famous for a lot of their stuff. The loading rates for highly pretreated effluent are different. So if you were to take standard septic tank effluent and dump it on the ground with all those solids in it, it'll take longer to seep into the soil than if you took a glass of, say, tap water or clarified effluent and dumped into the soil, because those solids aren't going to clog the pores. So it's just that liquid flowing right through there. Tried to make that painless. Those scientific studies are tough. So what you have here is how soil clogging starts. Heavy loading of the soil with the effluent can cause saturation. Once you get saturation in the soil expands, and then the pores clog up. The solids in the effluent are also going to clog the pores, reducing your long-term acceptance rate. And then once you have soil saturation, you have reduced aerobic activity. The anaerobic bacteria does not break down those solids as fast as the aerobic bacteria does. So the reduced aerobic activity prevents a natural breakdown of the organic material. And you can see how the effluent flows through. The little green things are the solids, and then the water gets clogged there. Those pores expand, and then it just kind of shuts it down and doesn't let the effluent flow through naturally. On the top is a picture of the anaerobic bacteria. The bottom one is the aerobic bacteria. If you were to look at those under a microscope, the anaerobic bacteria is just going to be sitting there stationary. It's going to twitch once in a while, It's not really going to move, but the aerobic bacteria darts around everywhere. It's always looking for food. It wants to eat all the time. It requires oxygen, so you have to have it. And it helps us in our product keep the biomat to a manageable level. Because we're using that biomat to collect those organic solids. But if it grows too thick, it's going to take too long for the effluent to flow through. So our system becomes aerobic. We need that aerobic bacteria to manage our biomat buildup inside the GSF. How the GSF works, you're going to notice later that that white stripe doesn't look all that good. It's 2 feet wide, 7 inches high, 4 feet long. They weigh 13 pounds, and there's 65 square feet of fabric in one module. We're taking advantage of that vertical surface area, which I'll show you right here. The drawing at the bottom, Rain Lack was sitting at his desk one day, and he said, how can I get more surface area into a 3 foot wide trench? So he was making all these little drawings, and the one on the right is the GSF. So the open air channel areas are where we have the plastic core. And what we do is we wrap that fabric up and down and over and under the plastic core material. The plastic cuspated core material, there's one large and one small on the left. And then the non-woven geotextile fabric is on the right. You can see in a picture on the left how it's wrapped up and down, and then they strap it together for the finished product on the right. So that's one continuous piece of fabric. All that vertical surface area is going to grow biomat. When the effluent flows over that biomat, that's going to collect those organic solids. It's also going to process pathogens. So the fabric provides the surface area for the filtration, as I just mentioned, in the biological development, promotes growth, biomat growth away from the soil interface, preserves the sand and unit interface by minimizing clogging, and it's a primary stage for treatment. This was a new picture I added. I want to get in here. So the cuspated plastic core, and that's a B43. This was just closest to my office. The A42 is only 2 foot wide. This one's 3 foot wide. The core provides the structural support. The product is H10 load rated, so you can drive over it with a 16,000 pound vehicle. We never recommend you drive over your septic system, but in some states it's required. It also creates open air channels within the module to support the aerobic activity. The best way to explain it is the tidal effect and how the system works. If you imagine these pier pylons on a picture on the left, that's your Elgin GSF. That's your fabric looped up and down over that plastic core. Where do you see the rot? The rot shows up between the low tide and the high tide level, okay? Because that's when the bacteria gets deposited on those pylons. When it's underwater, it's anaerobic. But at low tide, the aerobic bacteria comes in and starts to eat away at all that food, all the nutrients that were left there. That's exactly how the GSF works. High tide event, your system gets dosed, you deposit solids, you grow biomat. As the effluent drains out, the aerobic bacteria come in and they start to break down all those organic solids, keep that biomat at a nice manageable level. This is a stone and pipe system. How the biomat grows in here, the effluent's going to come out. It's going to go through the stone. That's not going to grow any biomat. It's going to go down to the native soil, wash along the trench's length, and those solids are going to fall and start to clog those soil pores. And it may take a couple of years before that whole trench accepts the effluent at an equal rate when it reaches equilibrium. But the longer that it takes for that effluent to drain through, the longer it stays wet. Then it grows thicker biomat. So I don't know if anybody's heard the term a creeping failure, but that's how they discuss how a stone and pipe system works. It's a creeping failure. It's just a matter of time before the whole thing fails. This is the Elgin GSF, and you can't see the geotextile fabric, but you can see the core material. So you would have fabric over the top of that. So the whole module is surrounded by sand. We have 6 inches underneath and a minimum of 6 inches on either side. Having that sand in there, if you have a fast soil, the sand allows the effluent to drain out at a rate that it still gets treatment. Stuart or somebody was talking about faster soils earlier. So this allows the effluent to drain out at a steady rate. If you have a clay soil, it's allowing it to drain out at that steady rate where it doesn't cause saturation. Okay, so it works on both types of soils very good. Once the effluent drains out, now you have an aerobic treatment zone inside the module because it's draining out through the sand, and you're going to have a thin layer of biomat build up on the sand, but right where the fabric and the sand are contacting each other, because you have your two wet surfaces. So it's going to take longer then to dry out than for the rest of the system. Here's a picture of a system that we did our NSF testing on. This one we tested for 18 months, and this was 450 gallons a day. So that's your peak flow, all right? Normally you won't see 450 gallons a day, but at NSF, they dose it at 450 gallons a day if that's what you're designed for. So you're always at your peak flow. Normally you might see 300 gallons per day for a 450 gallon system. So we took it apart, and the picture doesn't do it justice. You can see the lines go all the way across. That's where the fabric was on the bottom of the module. The open air channels were perfectly clean. And when we scraped it with a screwdriver, it was only down, the biomat was only down to about 1/8 of an inch in depth. Once the effluent goes through the module and the 6 inches of sand, that's what it looks like. That was a sample we took out of the system. It's clarified effluent. It looks like tap water. It has no smell at all. You still can't drink it. There's still pathogens in there. But when it looks like that, it's able to go through the native soil at a faster rate than standard septic tank effluent. Some of the approved installation types, we have trenches on the top, beds in the middle, and mounds on the bottom right. You can do a curved or straight for the trench. The system on the left was a lake lot in Wisconsin. And the guy bought the lot, tore down the house, built a larger house, wanted a garage, wanted a deck. You have to meet your setbacks from the neighbor, setbacks from the well, setbacks from the lake. Didn't want to cut any trees down. Both of the driveways est into the properties, his neighbors. So we were able to zigzag the system in between both driveways to meet all the setbacks. We wanted him to take a few more trees down. The ones on the right are a little close, but he didn't want to do it. But it'll still work pretty good. And you can see that white stripe on there. That indicates which side is up. And I'll have a slide on that. Here's a cross section, 6 inches of sand below, 6 inches on either side. It comes up even to the top of the module. And then there's 6 inches of cover material over the top of the pipe, or 10 inches over the module. So this is just a plan view of trench system. You have to have a separation of native soil in between your two trench rows. It's different for every state. I don't know what it is in Hawaii, 6 feet, 9 feet. Don't know. 5? Oh, 5 minutes. I thought they said 5 feet.
5 minutes for Q&A.
Right now?
Yeah, so you can just.
Okay. Now this is just a pressurized system. It's a side view of the bed, mound, same thing. This is a side view drawing for the mound, contoured. You can distribute pretty much any way you want. Here's a D box. And we don't have to get into installation procedures. I threw that in there in case I didn't have enough stuff. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, let's open it up for questions. I do want to recognize Elgin. They, in giving this award to this veteran on the Big Island, I mean, they went above and beyond the cost on it, and they covered everything. It was so incredibly generous in honoring our vets. So I just want to give you guys a round of applause.
Normally, we just donate product for veterans, but this was just a good opportunity, and we're excited to be able to help out here on the island. So it's good to see everybody in the rooms. It's going to take all of us to make this work out.
So yeah, questions for
Scott.
Questions for Scott. The thing about the system that's really good is passive, but it's also, so if you're anywhere near water bodies, you're gonna have to do something that is nutrient, you're gonna have to do nutrient reduction, like nitrogen. And so this is a passive way to do it. So you're kind of doing the treatment and the disposal at the same time. But let's have any comments or questions.
Yes, we are NSF 245, NSF 40 and 245 certified.
Hi, just curious, as you're thinking about deploying more systems in Hawaii, if you have any lessons learned from the install that you did with respect to the bedrock and how that would probably be an issue in lots of different places around the island?
So what we want to do now, we have our partner with Next Gen Septic, and he's been going around to all the sand manufacturers, because we had to get the sand from Oahu, put it in super sacks, put it on a boat, and then have it, shipped over, picked up by the truck, added a lot of extra cost. So he's been visiting all the sand manufacturers to see if they will start manufacturing C33 sand. That'll help reduce that cost.
Yeah, that's gonna be a big need across Hawaii. Yeah. Senator
Thanks. On that, for that kind of application, that you have,
thanks. Or you do have a minimal amount of topsoil in that case, or depth? What prevented doing the mound option you had previously looked at?
I think they didn't want the mound because when you do the mound, you're gonna have a toe. And then it would have ended up going into where the new home was gonna be. Because you're building this above grade. So if we put in the cinder soil and then 6 inches of sand, you're up a couple of feet now, and you gotta extend that way out. That was the only reason why we did. If we have the room, we would have done a mound.
And that extra sand, believe it or not, is expensive in Hawaii. It has to be a certain type of sand, C33 that we have to use.
So that's, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
The C33 sand, the reason why it's a washed concrete sand. Normal sand is gonna have fines in it, just like if you had a truckload of rocks and you drove it down the road, they're all gonna vibrate together and create fines. And what happens if you have too many of those fines, if it's unwashed, is the fines work their way down through the coarser material of the sand and get into the soil pores, clog it, and they don't break down. So even if there's aerobic activity down there, you'll never break that down.
All right, any other questions?
Did I hear it, Mitch?
yeah, so for the people online, just so everybody knows, we've got about 25 people online.
Three bedroom house,
Yes, sir.
2 adults, 2 kids, 8,000 square foot lot. How much of the yard gets taken up by the filter? And
So-
is the filter partly above ground? So when you walk into the backyard, oh yeah, that's my filter.
If you have enough depth to limiting layer, we require, it was further out in a presentation, 3 feet to limiting layer.
Yeah.
Okay, minimum. So as long as we have that, it can all be below ground.
Okay.
Okay, and then you need 6 modules per bedroom. So if you have a 3-bedroom, that's gonna be 18, so that's gonna be 3 by 73.
So 70 feet long.
Yep.
Okay.
Unless you do multiple rows.
Yeah, right, thanks.
All right, any other questions? Comments? All right, let's give a big round of applause for Scott.
Thanks, everybody.
And we're gonna do a quick guess, verbal prize. Can anyone guess where Scott is from?
I know. I can't say.
Come on. All right, we got a Boston boy here.
All right, thank you so much, Scott, and everyone from Elgin that's able to join us today. And then, so we're gonna pull up our next speaker, and then after that, we'll have a quick coffee break. So our next speaker is Fuji Clean. I was able to introduce them to Sea Grant, Voice of the Sea, and feature their technology. So we're very excited to share with you their innovations. And just so you know, Shayla or Christina over there is going to give you a little 2-minute warning, just so you guys know when to wrap it up.
Yeah,
no
5
worries.
minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, and then 5 minutes for Q&A.
We will give you 2 minutes at the end of the.
Yeah.
And so you can hit the
And
space bar
Dennis
right
also
here for the
serves
next
on
one.
our advisory board. Has been a big help with a number of our projects.
Yeah, I'll give you both like a 2-minute warning. The timer will go off at your 15 minutes, and then after that, we'll have 5 minutes.
All right, good afternoon. My name's Dennis Poma. I'm here with Richard Chiodini. We're both Italians. Scott's at my table. He was saying, well, you know, he doesn't usually like to do poop jokes because they stink, right? Poop jokes aren't on the top of my list, but they are a solid number 2. See, I told you they stink, right? Before I get started, I want to just say some parting words for Joachim, who's going to be leaving Hawaii, going back to Germany. He was an employee of mine while he was in an internship when he first moved here. He's done great things for the community and for this industry. We're going to really be sad to see him go. He's been a great person to work with and to be a part of this. I do have to say, if you're going to Germany, so you're German, you're going back to Germany. Do you know what the word is for fart in German? No, it's far from pooping. I got a number of ones. All right, so Fuji, I'm here today for really Fuji Clean, but I'm also an engineer. I am in the trenches. I'm sad to see that our next governor, hopefully, has departed because we've got some real problems here in the state. And as an engineer, I deal with them every day. So one of the reasons why I got a technology like Fuji Clean, and that is to solve some of those problems, which I'm going to highlight for us today. So who is Fuji Clean? It's actually a Japanese company. They've been around for, is there any way to make this bigger here so we can, I don't have to look over that way, or it's like really small.
Yeah. Yoko, do you know how to make that bigger over here?
My glasses aren't that strong to see the text.
You can also just
Oh,
look at there.
yeah,
That's
but
what I
then
did.
you're going back and forth. Yeah. it's
Yeah,
just like-
I don't know how to make it bigger, but I
Like
was
a
just looking at
full screen. So.
Yeah, let's do this.
Oh, there we go.
Put this over here.
There we go.
Better?
Okay, better, thanks. Yeah, it was like this little thing you couldn't see, and I was like, I don't want to have to look back and forth. So, all right. So they were founded in 1961. We've been around for over 50 years. They're based out of Nagoya, Japan. They started a U.S. operations about 8 years ago or so, about 8 years ago, and in Hawaii, really only 3 years ago. So we're fairly new to Hawaii as an aerobic treatment unit technology. Worldwide, Fuji has over 2 million systems installed. One of their big operations is in Australia. America, US is a very new and strong market, and much so here in Hawaii as well. We've got right now more than 50 in the ground and another 25 on its way being shipped here right now. So it's been, during COVID, things were very strong because people had discretionary monies and things were being built. But I think we're going to see a slowdown here in the next year or so for sure. They were highlighted in Newsweek International magazine last year, 2020, or I guess 2 years ago. So they're very prominent. They have a great research facility. We were scheduled or hoping to go check out the technology ourselves. We haven't seen the manufacturing facility yet because of COVID. So things are starting to lessen and lighten up. So we're hoping to get over there and really get Fuji more integrated in the Hawaii market here, which we just haven't had the opportunity to do so yet. Fuji there's 3 of us. The main license is held by an individual who's not here. He's out of the Boston area. His partner, Richard, who's going to go over some of the advantages of the system in a little bit, and myself as the local dealer. So I have an engineering company and then the Fuji Clean dealership for here in Hawaii. We have a number of models. We can cover the gamut for just about any situation for any project out there. So we have systems that are both NSF 40, which deal with your basic aerobic BOD and total suspended solids. And then also the NSF 245, which are for very certain applications, which has a very low nitrogen effluent quality. They come in 2 series. So the NSF 40 is known as our CE series, our basic models. And then our CEN, the N for nitrogen, are our NSF 245s. Both of them come in either 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, or the 5-bedroom. So we do a lot of systems in Hawaii. We actually have a lot of 5-bedroom, 6-bedrooms, big houses and stuff. So we do sell a lot of the 5-bedrooms. They cover the 4 and 5-bedroom scenarios. We also have expanded into wastewater treatment plants. We're starting the Olamana Golf Course very shortly here in the next week or so. And so we have series that are anything over 1,000 gallons is considered a commercial system in Hawaii or a wastewater treatment plant. So we have from 1,400 gallons, 1,900 gallons, 2,700 gallons, and 6,000 gallons. So we actually have a number of the 6,000 gallon systems. We're doing some condominiums and apartment buildings, some small residential and commercial strip malls and such that we're doing on a commercial scale as well. The beautiful truck that you see there, that's my chariot that I get around with. And the tanks, actually, that is our CEN10, which is our largest residential system. And it actually can fit in the back of my pickup truck. So on occasion, I will deliver them to a site in the back of my truck. Although sometimes it's a little bit high when you go through certain areas. So trailers work great for it as well. When do you need FujiClean or when do you need aerobic? And this is where I really wish Lieutenant Governor Josh Green was here because, man, there are some areas like Pupukea that's just awful. We kill projects sometimes just because of our laws and our rules and the requirements. So, for example, I've got a couple sites way up in Pupukea. 1 bedroom requires 30,000 square feet per bedroom for discharge. Think about that. That's almost an acre per bedroom. So if someone wants to build, they have 2-acre lots up there, they want to put another house or an ADU, you cannot. And so we really, 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 really need to change the laws here so that we can have better development, better housing. I don't know, are you speaking later about some of the initiatives? No, we're not going through initiatives. This is a huge, huge issue. And I've got these every week coming through the door where you're just killing the homeowner's, dream of developing, and they don't do their due diligence ahead of time. And so that's a huge, huge, huge issue. And we're not doing enough aerobic systems. I'm an advocate of higher effluent quality. There's a lot of coastal areas that you can still do septic. Yes, you have 3 feet of separation of groundwater, but we have rising groundwater. So we really need to get away from septic and into these more passive or active systems. We are an active system. We have to have a blower. We have to have electricity. But we do have certain applications that are very well suited for us. So that one, the ET systems in the no-pass zone is a killer here. And so we need studies. I believe it's a very simple fix here. It's just that we need to get some state monies to do these proper studies so that the agency, the DOH, can properly make the decisions and have that data to support those decisions. We lack that right now in the industry. Where we're really suited and where we see most of our sales, for example, are in the NSF 245. We're seeing a lot of CPR lots, condominium lots. So you're getting lots that are 4,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet. They're coastal. They're 3 feet to groundwater. So you're doing variances to have a discharge either to an existing cesspool or direct to groundwater because you're so close to groundwater. So our NSF 245 systems are very well suited for those applications when you don't have land to do a leach field and you have to do direct discharge. So that's where we see a lot of our sales. The picture that you see is actually just below Pupukea, and this is an ET system. So we use drip irrigation, and we have the NSF 245 system with the control panels, and it pumps out into the field. In this case, we were low enough, just below Pupukea, enough sun, so each bedroom was only 3,000 square feet, but it's still a lot, right? So this is only a 2-bedroom house, so we only needed 6,000 square feet. But a 5-bedroom is 15,000 square feet, so it just takes up a lot of land. So that's the last one, the no pass zones. We do a lot of the ET systems because we have a very clean effluent that we can pump through the drip irrigation systems. The last one is if you're within 1,000 feet of a public water supply, and this applies to all islands. So we've done some on the Big Island, some on Maui, where if you're within 1,000 feet, you have to have an aerobic system, and it has to be a minimum NSF 40. So that's where we're seeing, that's where most of our sales are. We're doing a ton on Kauai, Hanalei area, Kapa'a and such. There's just a lot going on Kauai as well. So it's been great. Other reasons, we get some that just want to be better for the environment, right? So some of your more luxury estates where cost isn't an issue, and they just, they'll do that. This is the picture of the 6,000 gallon system going in at Olamana Golf Course. And then we have other applications for non-domestic uses and such, for restaurants and in other industry and such, where standard septic just isn't going to work, and so aerobic is going to be needed. The difference is, and I got to say, I'm happy that I ate lunch before Scott went through all that bad bacteria, good bacteria, and all that stuff in the leach field and everything. Hey, Scott, do you happen to know who the bathroom superhero is? The Flush Gordon? Yeah. You know what Superman calls his bathroom? The Super Bowl. All right, I don't have any more today. So the difference between septic and aerobic is septic, the ground, the soil is doing the heavy lifting. As in Scott's example, we did not have soil. Actually, I was the engineer who helped design, or I did the design for Elgin and volunteered my engineering services for that program. And so we have a lot of prohibitive layers here. Rock, basalt, we have very expansive soil. So it's very hard to discharge. When you have septic, you have a very, that biomat builds up, and that's where you see the failures, is in the leach fields. So in this case, aerobic systems, whether passive or active, is doing the heavy lifting. And so by the time your effluent is hitting the ground, you have a very clean, clear, oxidized water, and the soil doesn't get clogged as much. So you have a much better longevity to your leach field in operation of that. And then also we're constantly redigesting, so we don't have a lot of solids build up. I know I'm going to run short on time, but I do have to hand it over to him. So he is up next. He's going to go over a little bit more on the advantages in the actual treatment. Thank you.
That's it, Bill. I got 2 minutes, right? Well, you better hurry then. Okay.
You can skip that.
Yeah, okay, well, that's our tank. It's cut in half. It's got 3 chambers. First is equalization and sedimentation. The middle one is anaerobic, and the last one is aerobic with clarification. As Dennis said, we do have a denitrification process, and that's it. Advantages. One of the most important things, we want to stress is the fact that these things come completely assembled from the factory in Japan. You put them in the ground. The contractor has absolutely nothing to assemble. He just puts it in, connects the inlet, the outlet. And I think that's extremely important. The other, advantages are that we really don't have any mechanical parts inside the tank. There are no electrical, mechanical pumps. There is no metal in the tank, which may disintegrate. Now, this is the important thing that I want to get to, if I only got 2 minutes, and that is that when people are considering what type of system to put in, they focus on how much is the unit going to cost, what's it going to cost to install. Very rarely do they consider what the cost is to operate this thing. And in many cases, the cost difference which you may have, which may be many thousands of dollars of the capital cost, could very easily be gone in a few years when you consider the operating costs. What I did here is to present a chart. And there are 2 systems, which would be Fuji Clean is one of them, and there's another one, Option. Those are our competitors. I didn't identify them, options 1 to 5. But there is another one that also publishes what their kilowatt hour consumption is per day, Fuji being one. The others, I had to do some internet research, and what was interesting is that they would publish what their electrical cost was per day with a big asterisk. And the asterisk would say, based on 8 cents per kilowatt hour. Man, we were just informed on the Big Island that it's 39 cents per kilowatt hour. As you can see, the cost of operation absolutely matters. And if there's anything we want to get across is that's what we want people to focus on, as well as the initial cost of the system. How am I doing?
8 seconds.
Oh. 8 seconds. In closing, I wish the Lieutenant Governor was here. We are in preliminary negotiations with Fuji Clean Japan. And if things develop as we all hope, with the actual program of replacing septic systems, Fuji Clean is very interested in an assembly, initially an assembly plant, and should the numbers of sales, the units, prove them, a full manufacturing facility here in the state. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have 5 minutes for Q&A. Does anyone
4
have
minutes and 52 seconds.
And Dennis will be here all week. He's got a routine, whole septic routine. Yeah. I mean,
Thanks. This may be kind of a crappy question, but. Surprised how many of these conferences we've had and how few jokes there have been today. Anyway, really appreciated it. But actually, so I was just, you referred a couple times to some of the legal changes and even state funding that you had alluded to. Is that something that you can share? The obvious places to go? I mean, you don't need an answer right now, but if there's stuff there that comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, certainly areas like Pupukea, which is in the no-pass zone. And so the solution to that is aerobic systems, whether it's Elgin or Fuji or Arenco's or whatever, we can discharge to the ground. So the no-pass zone means zero discharge to the ground. You have to evaporate 100%. So, but we're in like Pupukea, you're 150 feet above groundwater. We're treating the water. We're actually putting clean water in. So by the time it reaches the groundwater, it's even further attenuated. So the solution is we don't need to really use ET, but the laws that were from 1970 is what's requiring that. And so it's just antiquated, and there's better technology and options to do that. The issue is the state does not have the data to make that decision. CENA's going to say from the wastewater branch to go, well, show me that when the water hits the groundwater, you're not going to impact groundwater. The Board of Water, the city's going to say, show me that the water quality is adequate before it gets into my drinking water, right? So we don't have a Red Hill situation. That's the big thing where we need to go. I put that as almost number one on my list here in the state.
Can you share that information with Brian?
Oh, yeah, we have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. And, one thing we did last year at our convening, and then we can send this to everybody if you're interested, we did a list of recommendations, worked with the top engineers in the state, including Dennis, and a lot of producers, and saying, these are where the regulations are old, outmoded, and costing homeowners potentially double what they should actually be paying. And so to introduce new technology, you've got to update the regulations. So we've got a list that we want to have sign on. And if you're willing to sign on, we need to kind of put some pressure, on the Department of Health to say, hey, work with us, work with these engineers, work with these companies to make it more efficient and less expensive. And Yoko helped author some of these things. So.
Yeah, and Stuart mentioned earlier, like $50,000 to do some installs. I have a septic system in Wai'i right now. An elderly woman, husband's dead, she has the estate, $70,000 to replace, to upgrade the cesspool. The issue is her cesspool's 40 feet deep. And the clay, there's expansive clay, so you can't discharge, there's zero discharge to the soil. So you have to get into the fracture zone. So she has to replace her cesspool with 40 feet of concrete rings, $70,000. They can't afford it. Can't do it. Yeah.
Here's a question from Zoom. Ramsey asks, how long would it take to supply a large number, like 100 plus units, since they're coming from Japan?
Yeah, it's a number of containers. You know, we can only get 4 to 5 per container, so that'd be, 20 plus containers. And just the manufacturing right now with supply demands and resources, it'd probably take about 6 months right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so I live in a community that has small lots, seasonal homes, but everybody's on a cesspool. Do you ever have a situation where you use one of your units for multiple households simultaneously?
Yeah, we, in Hawaii, we're limited to up to 2 dwellings per discharge per leach field. And it would have to be on the same lot. So you couldn't, you could technically, I guess, do a community one, but then you're going to get into covenants and shared expenses and it becomes difficult, but it is possible.
So, this is where the research meets the road, and we're looking for common sense solutions because that's a perfect story. And we hear it all the time, like people on fixed incomes and they want to do what's right. And we're not accommodating them, because then, for a lot of people, they're like, no, I'm not going to bother with it. It's just too much money. Like, I'll wait till they try to enforce it. So this is great because we have companies, and all the companies we have here are, we vet them to make sure they're mission driven. They're quite often family owned, and they're committed to helping Hawaii. But we also need to show reciprocity and say, hey, we will work with you to accommodate these new technologies. Because everything we have here is we're trying to produce better water quality for Hawaii. Because one study on the Big Island showed that 25% of the drinking water wells were contaminated with fecal indicator bacteria. And some of the numbers go higher in certain areas. So these are really, really pressing issues. Any other further questions or comments? Yeah, Rachel.
I didn't say why she's doing that. I was telling someone earlier, I've done 5 designs this week already, but we're still so far behind the 8 ball. We need to be doing 3,000 systems a year. I do 50 to 60 designs per year, septic, aerobic, other systems, but we're so far behind the 8 ball. We need more.
So I wanted to learn more about the advanced manufacturing side. And I don't know if there's been a feasibility. I mean, in my mind, 88,000 cesspools that needs to be replaced, it seems to be a no-brainer. But I imagine there's a lot more in terms of the infrastructure, the workforce, and the materials. I imagine we don't produce so much materials, so they will have to be imported too. So I don't know if you could share a lot more about that advanced manufacturing side.
And COVID put us behind a little bit here. We're supposed to hopefully work with Dennis, that Stewart's helping us to make that Japanese connection a little bit stronger. It's very preliminary right now, just because everything's been so behind. We need to get over there and we need to continue these discussions. But and part of it's economy. It's just a numbers game too, right? It has to make. The Japanese are very business sense oriented, and it's got to make sense for them. And so we need more numbers to make it happen. 50 a year just isn't enough for them to do that.
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, let's give it a round of applause. Dennis and Richard, thank you all. We're running a little behind, so we're just going to take a 5-minute maximum coffee break and bathroom break. Bathrooms are right outside. So if we can return here by 3:05, that would be great, and we'll get into our next presentation and onward to discussions. Mahalo. We're going to bring you back down. I hope you guys are caffeinated and ready to go. We are about ready to introduce Councilmember Kelly King. Supposed to come over here, but as you all know, this is an election season, and everybody's in high gear just running for office. So she sent her very best and this video that we want to share with you about some projects that we're doing on Maui.
Aloha kako. Thank you for inviting me to provide opening comments for WAI's 3rd annual Innovations in Sanitation Convening. It's an honor to provide remarks to this group of innovators, policymakers, agency leaders, and advocates who have all gathered together to talk about the fundamental issue of the management of our wastewater. It is said in Hawaii, "Ola'i ka wai," or water is life. Maui, where I live, knows this intimately. After more than a century of conflict over plantation-driven water policy and corporate control, we are finally entering into an era where we are learning or relearning the importance of water as a public trust resource, one which nourishes and brings life to our people. It requires the utmost care and attention so that this precious resource is provided to all and allows our community and culture to flourish equitably and sustainably. When we speak of water as a public trust resource, however, the attention tends to focus on the management of our streams and fresh water. Excuse me for being crass, but nobody wants to think about our food and feed, especially as a source of life. But that's what makes you innovative. You think differently and see the vast potential that lies in our waste and the possibilities that open up if we view the water cycle holistically. If we commit to sustainability, the circular economy, and reuse. We need you, your ideas, and your advocacy. Here's why. The Maui County Council is currently deliberating on a $1 million loan from the State Department of Health for cesspool conversion. Our Director of Environmental Management told us that this loan is enough to convert 10 cesspools. 10 cesspools in 1 year out of the 12,000 cesspools which need to be converted by 2050. There are 7,400 cesspools in upcountry Maui alone that are labeled priority level 1 by the Department of Health, meaning these cesspools pose significant risk of human health impacts, drinking water impacts, or draining to sensitive waters, end quote. 10 cesspools in 1 year, while our drinking water, aquifer, freshwater streams, and coastal waters are threatened by the most dangerous cesspools in the state. We cannot continue relying on 50-year-old technology to address the problems of today. Innovation grounded in the cultural and community values of this place are the only way forward. An example of this kind of progress is occurring in Ma'alai, Maui. Ma'alai's condos currently rely on more than 20 1970s era injection wells, which only separate solids from the waste before injecting wastewater near feet from the shore where people fish and swim. There is little doubt that this pollution has contributed to the water quality of the bay, which is currently listed as a 303D impaired body of water by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Working with the community and expert innovators like Stuart Coleman, our council funded a cheaper, more efficient, and more effective membrane bioreactor, or MBR, regional solution to transition Ma'alai from yesteryear's technology. This solution will be cheaper and more quickly activated than previous proposals to route the wastewater miles away to a centralized system proposed in another community. Excitingly, the model will also create usable, high-quality recycled water that can irrigate landscaping, community agriculture, and fire pits. This relatively small, low-impact solution is mobile. If it can work here, it presents an opportunity for other communities needing to transition from harmful wastewater practices and at a larger and more cost-efficient scale. This is just one example of the opportunities that exist through the collaboration and work of people like you. I hope that this gathering will be an incubator for many such ideas and wish you productive discussions. Opportunities exist in alternative, experimental, and innovative technologies to move us into a new era in circular economy. And there's work to be done in engineering, scientific, and political realms. I wholeheartedly support your efforts today, and I encourage you to reach out if I can give any assistance in enabling the solutions you develop. Ola Ikawai and Ihua.
Thank you for sharing that with us. We're going to be heading to Maui, and so nice. We played it twice. We're going to be heading to Maui this week on Thursday to a site visit to Ma'alai. We have some folks in the room from Maui Environmental Technologies and Vokwa and a couple other companies that are looking at. So this could be a real exciting opportunity to show kind of state-of-the-art 100% recycling of solids and liquids and really being a showcase for the rest of the country.
So up next we have speaking is another nonprofit called Ridge to Reefs, and we've had the pleasure to be able to work with them quite a bit in the past year. They create an amazing nature-based system to reduce nutrients and toxins in the water. So I'll introduce Val Manta with Ridge to Reefs.
Thank you. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Fal Mantha with Ridge to Reefs. So today I'm going to be speaking about nature-based wastewater treatments for treatment options for Hawaii. Basically, our vision for this is that we have high-quality systems available for the community with a focus on circular economies and reuse of waste materials. Oftentimes, what we use in our systems are waste streams. Our goal is to protect groundwater, coastal water, and coral reef health, as well as coastal ecosystems. Ultimately, we want to reduce the costs that are associated with OSDS for homeowners. And finally, we want to provide safe, low-cost treatment options for disposal and reuse of wastewater, including for injection wells. This is our team. We're based out of Sykesville, Maryland, but we have staff throughout the Caribbean and Pacific. We work in Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Palau, as well as the Chesapeake Bay, where it's kind of our home base. And we're working with WAI for a USDA technical assistance and training grant. So up there, you can see some of the other members of our team. We are primarily biologists, agronomists, and engineers. And then just very briefly, this is a little overview of what we do. We work throughout the watersheds. So we focus on things, pollution from legacy agricultural sites. So oftentimes we use kind of nature-based solutions, native species and vetiver to trap sediment. We work with farmers to encourage the utilization of cover crops and other best management practices. We also build several different types of wastewater treatment systems. On the right, you can see a cascading treatment wetland system. And we also do more engineered systems, such as our bioreactors and bioreactor gardens, which we will get into a little more. In the bottom left there, you can see a larger system that we built for a 27-room hotel. And on the right, the bioreactor garden, which is for 3 bedrooms or 600 gallons a day. We've kind of covered a lot of this stuff today. Basically, 88,000 cesspools. There's over 20 million gallons a day of secondary treated wastewater being injected. And ultimately, right now, there's no clear path forward. And as we all know, volcanic geology, soil characteristics, and depth of bedrock or water table are some of the issues that are pretty common. Here's a picture of our system. As you can see, it's not too bad to look at. This system, since it was being tested at the wastewater plant, we built it as an above ground system, but these systems can be built, put into the ground. They can be somewhat raised, so we don't have to excavate all the way, or they can be built entirely above ground as well. And our system uses a combination of vetiver grass, which is a sterile cultivar of vetiver. It's triploid, so it cannot propagate itself. And we use a variety of native plants, including hibiscus and uhaloa. And so here's some of the relevant treatment processes. As you can see, we have an aerobic sand layer, or that can be either sand or a basalt aggregate. That performs a lot of our nitrification. There's also the plants. As you can see, there's 6 different mechanisms of phytoremediation that can come into play. So yeah, nitrification. Then we have biochar, which is we use in a lot of our projects. It's a highly functionalized sorbent material. And we have the anaerobic wood chip layer. I think the common thread here is that all of these are local materials. So they're, the sand we get from local aggregate suppliers. The biochar and the wood chips are actually made from invasive species. In this case, I believe they were made from Java plum. Okay. Oh, okay, yeah, so you can see what the different layers do. We have nitrification, denitrification, and last but not least, evapotranspiration, which allows us to reduce the volume of wastewater. Okay, why vetiver? It is a fast-growing, non-spreading, and non-invasive grass. It's really a highly functional plant for us because it's just got an incredibly high capacity for absorbing pollutants such as nitrogen and phosphorus. Furthermore, it's highly salt tolerant. We'll get into that here in a second. We have some projects right on the coastline. So even in situations where you get salt spray, something the vetiver can handle very easily. Lastly, according to the Pacific Islands ecosystem at risk, the sunshine cultivar of vetiver we use has a -8 rating. Again, it's triploid. It cannot, propagate itself. We did a NSF 240, 245 and NSF 40 standard equivalent testing in collaboration with Dr. Babcock. And here's some of our results. As you can see, 87% removal of total nitrogen. Think about 83% reduction in phosphorus, 15 to 20% volume reduction. This was when the system was tested maybe 6 to 9 months in. So once the system's reached maturity, we can get to about 15 to 20% volume reduction. And it met and exceeded the NSF 40 and 245 criteria. And the key, I think one of the keys with our system is that our goal is to ultimately enable local circular economies. We really look at this as a new paradigm in wastewater treatment. Our nitrifying media is, as mentioned, is like a local basalt aggregate that has enormous benefits in that, in addition to reducing some of the phosphorus, it allows us to work with local quarries and aggregate suppliers. Similarly, the other parts of the media, namely the wood chips and biochar, are from invasive species. So we can work with landscapers and other landscaping companies and other local businesses to really create circular economies. It's also worth mentioning we've secured some funding from Maui County to do a pilot project testing crushed glass that would be used in the aerobic zone instead of, say, the basalt aggregate we used in our last system. And ultimately, we really think that this sort of low-cost, nature-based system can democratize access to sanitation services. Again, the costs associated with these conversions are not insignificant. So we really feel that by using local materials, local expertise, that we can just bring the cost as low as possible. Current approval status. Currently, we're still going back and forth with DOH. We are currently approved in areas where the 25-year storm does not exceed 9 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. So I've circled some of the areas up there. You can see where it can be applied, but through a simple modification, we're asking DOH to approve our systems throughout the state. All that is it's an impermeable liner that goes on top, so you can essentially eliminate precipitation as a factor. Let's see. And then larger capacity systems. This is a system we built in Guanica in Puerto Rico for a 27-room hotel and restaurant. Unfortunately, their system was overflowing into Guanica Bay for about 50 years. And this system we designed to handle up to 6,000 gallons a day, so about 10 times the size of the system, the bioreactor garden we tested. As you can see, it's not too bad to look at. The hotel, this area used to overflow, experienced surface failure, smelled bad. The hotel really views this as an amenity. There's not Hawaiian hibiscus, but the cages are hibiscus. We have cages on them because there's invasive iguanas that like to eat them, so we had to protect them. But as you can see, it's really not too bad to look at, and the hotel really looks at this as an amenity. And this picture is just in there to highlight how close we are to Guanica Bay. So as you can see, in certain conditions, it's not unfeasible to see saltwater spray. And also just a very high water table. Even in challenging conditions like these, our systems perform very well. In terms of next steps, what we would like to do is assess performance in terms of reduction of pathogens, pharmaceuticals, and xenobiotics. We also want to work on smaller drain fields and enhanced drain fields for water quality improvements. And would also like to do further assessments of evapotranspiration performance in different locations. The images on the top are from NRBs. Similar, very similar technology, but that was done on the East Coast. And as you can see, there's 50 to 100% removal of a lot of different pharmaceuticals, personal care products, and their metabolites, and over 98% reduction in pathogens. So again, the data indicates that these sorts of technologies, primarily that use denitrification and denitrifying bioreactors, can be very effective at reducing pathogens. So that's something we'd like to test further, just to get some solid metrics on by how much. And that's all I have for now.
All right, thank you so much, Val. Do you have anyone have any questions for Rich, Reese, or Val?
So I was just wondering, do you guys work with Better Farms Hawaii? They're a local based Better Farms here.
We don't. We work with Sunshine Vetiver Solutions. Our buddy John is still, he's on Maui. We've worked with him for a number of years now. So that's our primary partner there. That's
With the impermeable liner, will you be getting rid of the plants on top or?
No, the plants would be planted into it. So essentially we're able to reduce our surface area by over 97%. So imagine just impermeable liner, maybe a 2-inch hole for vetiver, planting the vetiver into. Furthermore, we're looking into adapting other technology from the horticultural industry. They make expandable plant collars. So you'd actually just plant directly into there and further even reduce that 3% of exposed surface area. So again, our goal is just to eliminate, precipitation as a factor for these systems. Yes, sir.
What have people asked to the mic, just so the people on Zoom here?
You mentioned that the vetiver is salt tolerant, but have you done any work to determine if it actually reduces TDS in the effluent?
Not directly. We haven't tested that directly, but we know that there's probably a few mechanisms in place, like rhizal filtration, other things where the roots of the vetiver are, I would say, most definitely responsible for some of the reduction in TSS that we were getting.
And in terms of the scalability, which is your limiting factor, is it going to be the biochar or your assault, or where are you limited right now?
I would say we don't have too many limiting factors in terms of scaling it, just because of the fact. Honestly, let me take that back. Probably the septic tank, because that's the main imported costly component of our system. We have, it's easy to access, lots of aggregator, lots of wood chips. Even the biochar is not super hard to get or make. Whereas the septic tank, that's being imported. It's probably one of the most costly components of our system. So I would say that's the limiting factor. We'd love to, see if there's local manufacturers for that. But yeah, I would say probably the septic tank. And then our executive director, Paul Sturm, is here too. So Paul, did you want to add anything in terms of limiting factors or anything else?
No, I agree with what you said. Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah. Other questions or comments?
And one comment on the vetiver, we would plan to work with,
We do plan to work with different vetiver growers on different islands. That just makes sense logistically. So I have talked a little bit to the folks on Big Island, the particular firm you're talking about. So, and I think as with Fuji Clean, just the results that they get and the water that they're putting back to the ground is so much higher. I can't even tell you quality than what we get from just traditional septic systems.
And Stuart, the one thing I wanted to add that I forgot to mention in my presentation was just that really with these technologies, they're really very configurable. So in cases where reuse is very important, we can send more of that effluent through our bioreactor technology where it's just a bioreactor. So there's no reduction in volume. So we have all the nitrogen and a lot of the other pathogens reduced, and we can reuse that water. In cases where we want to reduce the volume, we can put it to a more evapotranspirated type system where we can significantly bring down the volume of effluent as well. So it's really, at the end of the day, we can configure it to the use case at hand.
And there are just some, policies that we still need to change at DRH, as Dennis was saying, to accommodate these systems. I mean, we've proven that the one at East Honolulu treatment plant, it was hugely successful. The results, the reductions of nitrogen and phosphorus. So we've got to move forward, with these technologies and change the rules. And so that's something that, we'd love your help on when we have our breakout groups. Like, what's the best way to do that?
what are the rules that need to change with DOH?
Thank you for asking that question. That was one of our audience plans. Yoko, do you want to take this one? Maybe some of the top recommendations that Yoko put this together.
Yeah, thank you. I think a big part of what we hope to see change is inspection becoming a thing? Because currently, you can imagine if wastewater systems are designed and installed, there's one single point in which the Department of Health gets an information about the status of the system, and that's in the very, very, very beginning. And then from then on, no information. It is essentially, you have to assume the worst, that any active components are not being upkept, that pumping is not happening, that any biological elements are dead. And that means if you have to assume the worst, that's a lose-lose scenario for everybody. You cannot start giving, credits for special components like using incineration toilets to reduce the toilet volume or using a gray water system to reduce the volume going to the black water system. If you always have to assume the worst, then a homeowner has to build the biggest system, spend the most money, use the biggest footprint, and that's the lose-lose. So what we hope to see, and this is at the core of many of our requests, is an inspection program just like many other states have it. It could be done in-house at the government, or it could be a certification program where private companies can become inspectors after they have been certified by the DOH.
And Yoko, if I may add to maybe the one other one that's relevant to this conversation is credit for evapotranspiration. In many parts of the world, we built these systems zero discharge, which was really the gold standard for us. All the effluents evapotranspirated. So if DOH could give credit for evapotranspirative systems, I think that could go a long way in reducing the cost of these systems as well.
Exactly, and part of that is again inspection to make sure that the grass that is uptaking the liquid is actually there. So yeah, thank you for letting me share about that.
You maybe just mention the reduced leach field.
Yeah, exactly. So this would yield reduced leach field sizes, meaning more footprint saved. Smaller properties will be benefiting from that, and also just reduce labor costs for the excavation, which is still the highest component of any wastewater system installation, is the labor cost.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. All right. Dennis, I'll speak to this a little bit because it's not that simple.
Unfortunately, in ET, and I've got systems that have leach fields and ET systems, or just some surface irrigation, doesn't have to even be ET. So from the state's perspective, I'm kind of speaking outside the engineer's realm here, is we have a lot of areas with high rain, so you can't just do it or apply it everywhere. And so the concern becomes, if you have surfacing, in any subsurface or ET system, even if you look at EPA's guidance manual, they're only effective about 90% of the time, because you have periods of what happens when you have 6 straight days of rain. You can't inject enough water into the ground through the subsurface irrigation or ET. So then you have to have 100% backup with a standard leach field. So I mean, we're killing ourselves here. It's just not that easy of a solution. And there's health risks to it as well. You can have dogs drinking, or cats, or animals and other that have those water has pathogens. And so it's not just saying, oh, well, I can get rid of water by doing subsurface irrigation. It's very difficult.
And we're going to be talking about some of the solutions in our breakout groups. But let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
For Val and our partners.
As Christina gets our next presentation up, next up we have Orenco. Orenco is a well-established family-owned company from Oregon. And the co-founder's son, Jeff Ball, is here today, along with Mike Saunders and Bill Cable. They offer much more efficient and affordable alternative grabbing sewer. And please help us welcome up Mike Saunders to help us tell us about their innovative system.
Aloha. So this is always really interesting to me when we talk about innovative solutions. I guess a little backstory on myself. So I've been in innovative solutions for a long time, probably about 26, 27 years. But I started really in the wastewater business with a utility in Florida. And it's kind of interesting, very early in my time there, we were in a program that we had spent $20 million in engineering, and the goal was to replace 45,000 septic systems with sewer. And we had 3 commissioners run on anti-sewer platforms and decide that we weren't going to put sewer in the way that we were trying to. So I had to get innovative really early in my career and figure out a solution. And
And part of what we're talking about today is actually kind of what I did in Florida. And I think it was a natural home for me to kind of get to Aramco because that's what I've been chasing throughout my career, is just innovation. So a little bit about Aramco. Today we're gonna talk about who Aramco is. We're gonna talk about Advantex, and we're gonna talk about Prelos liquid only sewer. And really this is the key topic today, is the Prelos systems. A little bit about applications and questions and answers. And I picked this photo here really because I thought it really spoke to who we are at Aramco. While we have a lot of products, we're really a solutions driven company. And you can imagine we've been around for over 40 years. So the word innovative, it's kind of weird applied to us because we've been innovative for a long time. And usually we're faced with challenges and our products are scattered all over this one solution. But really our products become by default towards solutions, I guess is what I'm saying. And you know, our main goal is protecting the world's water. And anybody that you meet from Aramco, you'll see that we're passionate about that goal, and everything we do is really fed by that. So a little bit about Aramco. We were founded in 1981. As stated in the opening, we're a family-owned company, and I think that's kind of odd for a company of our scale today. Most companies get bought up and they become part of big companies. We still see ourselves as a small company, but we have 450 employees. We're based in Sutherland, Oregon. We have dealers and distributors throughout the country and internationally. And this is the key thing. We're focused on passive, scalable, and economical wastewater collection and treatment solutions. And that's been our theme throughout our existence is, you know, while we could jump into other platforms, this theme really resonates across everything we do. And you'll kind of see that hopefully today. We are an industry leader in what we're going to talk about today, liquid only sewer and attached growth treatment processes. And the other thing you're going to see is that everything we do is built with the intent of being scalable, all the way from a single home to complete communities. And I think that's what really makes us different, is there's really no other company that does that, all the way from a single home, all the way up through large scale community projects. So what we do on-site wastewater treatment, both residential and commercial. We do wastewater collection. We do extensions to existing municipal sewer systems. We do cluster systems, meaning that we collect areas that need wastewater treatment and treat it within the close proximity to the source of the wastewater. We do complete community collection systems. So we provide solutions to communities that have no sewer, and we go in and we actually sewer the whole community. We do decentralized or distributed wastewater treatment, which is verbiage that you might have heard. We do control systems, not only for us, for other companies, and we do composite structures, most out of a product called DCPD, and I can't say the long form, so you can read it there, and FRP, fiber reinforced plastic. So I'm just going to kind of show you some of the main things we do. So on the left, we're going to be talking about Prelos. On the right is Advantex. And just, you can kind of see from the graphic, the scalability. And if you use the person as a scale, they're standing in front of some single family units, all the way up to the big ones there that can serve full communities. Little known fact, we do a whole lot of stuff too, other than wastewater. We do composites, we do buildings, we do docks, we do bridges. So even because we're good at some stuff like composites, we actually build other stuff. We do controls, not only for ourselves, for other companies. And these are, now I'll get into some of the flagship products that we do. So our recirculating packed bed filters, this is really one of our oldest platforms. And you've heard a lot about treatment today, so I'll just really briefly kind of explain what this is. So what happens with these systems is wastewater comes basically into one side of a vessel. That would be either, typically if it comes from our collection system, it's already pre-treated. It might be coming from a pre-treatment system local to the treatment. But when it comes into the system, I want you to really think about the simplicity of this. It goes down to the far end of that tank, and you'll see that there's a pump vault in the end. That pump basically keeps recirculating the wastewater into textile media, and that textile media is really the host of all the microorganisms that break down the wastewater. And it keeps recirculating through this system, and the bugs stay happy and they keep eating that wastewater. And eventually it gets discharged as wastewater comes in. So when we say it's a recirculating packed bed filter, you can kind of get the theme. And if you're trying to figure out what this looks like, you can see the graphic in the right-hand corner is a typical textile sheet that's in there. The lower right, you can see what a textile bed looks like, and those nozzles are actually spraying wastewater. And the reason we do this is there's the textile fabric has a huge amount of surface area and airspace. So as we put wastewater, kind of the best way I can describe it is like a wick. Wastewater goes down through it. We flow air through it to keep the bugs happy, and they break down the wastewater. So again, going back to our theme about scalable, really passive systems, we were talking about energy earlier. Well, the only thing we have here is a recirculating pump. You'll notice that there's no big blowers. There's very, very natural system, and it's scalable all the way from, in the blower graphic, is a single family home, again, all the way up through large systems. So in on-site, we have an AX20 on the side, left-hand side, and AXRT on the right-hand side, and this is what we use in single-family homes. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but kind of keep in mind that as I talk about the collection system, we always provide this primary treatment in our collection system, whether it be in a single-family home, all the way up through community systems. So that processor in the lower part always stays consistent, and we'll get into more detail on it. But again, this you can see that textile recirculating filter is basically the same, and we just package it a whole lot of different ways. So here's the Prelos wastewater collection system. So it gets a little confusing, and we probably caused part of the confusion. So these systems, Orenco started commercializing in 1981. They date back in the US to the early 70s. They were started in Florida, and they were referred to as step systems or septic tank effluent pump systems. And honestly, at Orenco, we have tried really, really hard to steer away from that verbiage, because people hear septic tank and they kind of get the wrong idea of what these are. So I want to kind of say, septic tanks get really a bad rap that they don't deserve. I mean, leaking septic tanks are bad, but watertight septic tanks are good. They provide free passive treatment. And that's really what we do at Orenco. We capitalize on the fact that if we retain flow that comes from the source and we keep it there long enough, we're going to reduce the wastewater strength before it leaves the source. And because we do that, it's easier to pump, it's easier to convey, it's easier to treat. So everything we do is based on that very, very simple principle. But when I was saying we cause confusion, so today we call it liquid only sewer. You'll hear it sometimes referred to as effluent sewer. And again, septic tank effluent systems or step systems, they're all the same thing. They're built on the same concept. So again, just not to get too technical here, this is what a Prelos processor looks like. So essentially there's one of these at each home or each building. They're sized, most of the systems we use will be sized to a 4-bedroom home or smaller. We have some larger systems for commercial and 5-bedroom and up. And the concept's pretty simple. Unlike a septic tank, the wastewater flows down to the far side of the tank and then flows back to the pump vault. And that pump vault is specifically designed just to pump from the clear zone in the tank. And I'll show you a profile here in a second. But the reason it goes down and back is the longer we make that flow path, the more likely the solids are to settle. And obviously we want the solids to settle and any scum to float before it gets there. The nice thing that it's modular, you can see up on the top there that they come in, they're delivered to the site ready to drop in the ground. And I'll show you how they're put together. But you can see down at the bottom, the main reason we do this is it provides primary treatment. So that treatment process that I showed you, it integrates with this. So when you put them together, it's a very economic process. So the basic concept again, so this is now, the pipe from the right is coming from the source, typically a home, comes into this tank, and any time that you detain wastewater, it's going to stratify into 3 layers. So the solids are going to go to the bottom, the scum's going to go to the top, and you're going to get that clear zone in the middle. And it's a little hard to see in the bottom, but the wastewater is reduced significantly. So for people to understand wastewater strength, we often measure it in BOD and TSS. The BOD coming out of these systems is about 140 milligrams per liter. Total suspended solids is about 30. Fats, oils, and greases are reduced. And again, it's all done passively and for free. So this is a really critical element because once we put it out in this collection system, again, it's going to behave very, very different. And just think about it, in practical terms, it's going to be a lot easier to convey water than to convey solids. So here it is, the 3 layers and reduced wastewater strength. So what does this now look like in a collection system? So again, you can see wastewater leaving the home, goes into that Prelos processor. and then discharges out to the collection lines. The main takeaway from these collection lines, right away, you can notice they're small, they're shallow. So our typical collection main, especially in southern climates that you don't have to worry about freezing, the typical collection mains are 2-inch diameter in most areas. Shallow, very shallow buried, so they just have to be buried deep enough that live loads like wheel loads are not going to damage them. So typically 3 feet, and if you armor them, you can actually shallow them up more. But once it gets out into that collection main, it behaves just like your water distribution systems. And that is really significant. You think about, even through Hawaii, you have water distribution system. You can see the fire hydrants. Well, it's because water distribution systems, you can pump water wherever you want. You can pull off those systems wherever you want. Well, these behave exactly the same. So I can provide treatment right there. I can provide treatment 20 miles down the road. And I can design the system to get there without any intermediate pumps. So all these stations pump all the way to wherever you need to treat it. It can pump to multiple locations. So this is the theme. It's very, very flexible, very easy to use. And we can provide benefit not only in our treatment, but any other treatment process. So here's just an example. So basically all we have to build to provide wastewater service is between the red lines. Again, that's that 2-inch pipe. I call this the availability cost. So if you're going out to a community, you run these 2-inch lines, and you don't have to put the on-site units, you actually provide service. So think about this, if you're familiar with gravity sewer, where you're putting in a lift station, deep pipes, manholes, that's a lot of money. And certainly if you've seen the engineering reports for various areas in Hawaii, you can see that that's been a lot of money. 2-inch pipes, very easy to put in and very much lower cost. So this is a tool in the toolbox on how you can make sewer available and then incrementally connect people as you need to. Quickly just show you the scalability of some of these. So everything we do is modular. So this is an AX100, and essentially we refer to these as pods. So we can add pods to get to whatever capacity we need. So in this case, each one of those pods is about 2,500 gallons a day. We just keep adding pods to get to whatever capacity we actually need. I mentioned that AX Max unit earlier. So these are, again, pods, large scale AX Max units. These are 7,500 gallons. And again, we just keep, you can kind of start counting pods to see what level of treatment we get. And we can add pods as we need to add capacity. So you don't have to go build a big treatment plant right away. So in some places, that's a really big advantage where you can incrementally add treatment as you need instead of investing in it all at once. So this significantly, these again, it's attached growth. There's no open tanks. It's modular, it's low energy, no corrodable parts, no headworks, no clarifiers, no aeration, no blowers, no odor. And just to kind of show that, the picture on the right is in front of the tennis courts at a park. There's not very many treatment processes that you can really do that and people won't notice. So again, here's just really to emphasize how modular it is. There it is being loaded on a truck. Above, you can see a plant being built about 7.5 feet across. They can be buried. They can be put above ground. Pretty cool stuff. And again, just some more examples of what these things look like. And would emphasize, we have a great website with a lot of information. And I could probably sit here and talk for 8 hours very easily, and I'll spare you all. But if you're interested, just go there. There's loads of case studies on small communities, commercial properties that talk about how the collection system is being used. And I would encourage everybody to go have a visit our website, and if you got hours of reading time to have at it. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, who's got the questions to start us off with? We've got a couple of places, pilot projects that we're looking at in Hawaii. We're going to Black Point tomorrow. You can imagine how convenient this would be in a place like Black Point, where it's, lava rock, and you have to bring in all the soil. Most of the lots don't have enough room for the septic, for the leach field. So we could hook up all these houses all at once and just take them right to the sewer line at Kahala Avenue. And there are lots of areas around Hawaii where we can do that. So it's super exciting. Any questions about this?
Thank you. Question from Travis on Zoom. What happens to the solids?
Great question. It's always an interesting question. We get asked it all the time. So that prellis processor, obviously we're keeping solids there. They're going to accumulate. And a lot of people kind of associate this with a septic tank. They go, hey, I got to pump my septic tank every 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. That's usually a regulated number. And the reason it's regulated is you can't predict how many people are in a home. And it could be one person, it could be 6 people. And you have to kind of look at the worst case scenario, because if solids start to get into a drain field, it's going to compromise the drain field. So they regulate that number prematurely. And the sad part about that is that tank actually gets more efficient at breaking down solids, and you kind of miss the boat on that. So these are professionally managed systems. Usually they're in the hands of a utility or a skilled operator, and they have basically, instead of pumping the tank every 3 to 5 years, they go out there and they measure sludge and scum in the tank every 3 to 5 years. And the interesting thing you're going to see is it's going to accumulate pretty quickly at first. Then you're going to see as you come out that not only is it plateauing and not escalating as fast, it actually some years, year over year, will go down. It's just the weirdest thing. You'll go 7 inches this year, and next year, if you measure it, would be like 6 inches. And the tank's getting more efficient. The solids are compressing more. And there's a huge advantage to keeping solids in there longer. So these systems are designed to actually target a 10-year pump out interval, actually 10 to 12 years. And the longer we can keep the solids there, the better, because we're going to reduce the overall volume of solids pretty significantly. So whether we go to our treatment process or any treatment process, we'll reduce the solids at the plant by about 80%. And we're going to keep the solids in the tank to reduce the overall volume of solids considerably.
Quick question for you all. What value does this have? Or let me ask you, what is the most expensive part when you're doing converting a cesspool? Septic tank or the leach field? The leach field, dramatically. That's the huge expense, because it takes a lot of space. You have to bring in sand, you have to dig up, it's very disruptive. This process can avoid that. And so you can save costs. And so you create a sanitation as a service model that this is built on. And so you get like sewer fees for a community, but they're most likely going to be less than they would ever pay. And they don't have to spend 30, 40, 50,000 to avoid that.
And quite often the areas we work in, there's a correlation between getting close to surface water and bad soils. And, conventionally, a lot of our wastewater systems flow downhill and they end up in these bad soil areas close to water. And that's one of the fundamental problems. Well, first thing you'll notice is we can move wastewater uphill. But also what's nice is you'll find in a lot of communities, it's not just here where you've got rock and bad soils. All over the country, there's areas where there's just no soil to use, or it might be scattered in certain areas. We can distribute the treatment out actually on the basis of disposal more so than on the basis of putting it in one spot and trying to flow everything downhill. So it gives you a lot of flexibility certainly on where you're going to treat and dispose of the treated wastewater as well.
Real big, simple question. The quality of the water that does come out can be used for like crop irrigation.
Well, that's really a function of the treatment. So while these, in areas where they don't need treatment, these can be used as septic tanks, and they can go right into a pressure drain field. They can go into a pressurized community drain field. More typical, if higher treatment levels are required, we have certain designs that will meet whatever requirement they want. If they're using another treatment plant like an MBR, we'll provide benefits in that MBR. So it's really not a function of our collection system. It's more of a function of the design for the treatment system. And these systems, certainly the trick is just to get the wastewater there first. And then, the key there is if you're requiring more advanced treatment, the costs escalate really quickly. And there's certainly an advantage then to going somewhere where you can use an MBR efficiently and get enough flow there to support it. And this is where this would work really well.
Other questions or comments? All right, let's give a big round then. And folks, we have people here who've flown in from across the country and are specialists in their field, so please take advantage of it. What this is building towards is our breakout groups, where we're really going to get jump into discussions. We need, based on Mitch's feedback at our first convening, we found a pilot project that could work. We need your local intel and input and feedback looking for communities where, and homes, we have free up to $20,000 to give a homeowner to, subsidize this bioreactor garden. We're looking for communities like Haiku Plantation in Kaneohe, where we could put in a Prelos model. Systems where, they have to have an ATU where you can use Fuji Clean, and, or the Elgin system. And Elgin's offering for, that. So anything you can give us, any information, contacts, let's use it. Let's work together so we can start this happening, and start protecting our waterways. Because one of the things that Christina can talk about more is we have, and Kelly mentioned, we have a number of water bodies in Maalaea, in Puako, in Kaneohe Bay, where the inputs from wastewater are having horrendous effects, and coral reef coverage is declining. I used to go clamming in the Long Island Sound, where my partner John Anner lives, and it was a generational industry for hundreds of years. It's 99% collapsed because of cesspools, because of wastewater. They don't go clamming in the Long Island Sound. This is some of the best oyster clams, crabs. So it's very real, the effects. And so we want to prevent that. When I was back there visiting, I said, I hate to ask this, but can we use you guys as a cautionary tale, back in Hawaii? And they're like, hell yeah, you should. Tell them, don't wait till it gets this bad. Start now, protect your waters. Hawaii depends on clean and pristine waters. So we're going to watch a quick video, and then we're going to have a brief coffee break, and then we're going to have Chris Lee speak to us, and then we're going to break out in breakout sessions and get your input on these things. So. This is part of a wastewater innovation cohort that we're part of. It's national.
This is a large pond, 88 acres, but who were building fish ponds, but then many times larger than this. The whole point was to raise fish and seafood so that people live on the islands and stuff. So we're talking literally tens of thousands of pounds of fish that supported a neighborhood, a village, a community in this Hawai'i. So it's all about the water, that water.
WAI stands for Wastewater Alternatives and Innovations, and WAI's mission is to restore healthy watersheds and reduce sewage pollution by converting cesspools. So most of North Shore, the neighborhoods are right along the coast. Almost everyone is definitely on the cesspool, and it's really just a hole in the ground where all the wastewater from the household just goes into a hole, and they have an open bottom. So all the wastewater just kind of percolates right into the ground. All of the waste that goes into the cesspool essentially leaches into the surrounding environment. We need to protect, upgrade, and especially since you guys are close to the water, it would be great if we can get you guys in a system that has a nitrogen reducing capacity.
With 88,000 across the state, reaching, discharging 53 million gallons a day of untreated sewage, that goes directly into our groundwater and can contaminate drinking water and then coastal ecosystems. The native Hawaiians that were here, they knew that from ridge to reef that everything is connected hydrologically. And so this is basic kind of indigenous knowledge that the Hawaiians had that we're really just now starting to really realize, and that this is not only a massive problem in Hawaii, but across the country.
Hawaii, Hawaii, Alaska, Alabama, Oklahoma, New York, and the Navajo Nation.
There's this whole subsect of the country where 45% rely on what are called decent water solutions. So these are remote communities where they don't have electricity, they don't have plumbing, where water comes out of the ground or out of a local watershed. They go right back where it came from. There's about 30 communities that are building that look like water for the community. I think innovation that address everything from Alaska down to the United States. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
This week, guy is listing a group from the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium.
This is the Cinderella incineration project. The great thing is, as you can see, it's not connected to a water line or a sewer line.
Flexibility, creativity, willingness to look at new ideas and new ways of doing things. And really a paradigm shift about how do we think about wastewater.
It's not just the burden of the homeowner or the problem of the homeowner, because it can cost anywhere from 15 to 50,000 in Hawaii to replace these systems, and the homeowners just don't have that right now.
The grass loves to uptake all that water, and therefore not only are we improving the quality, but also the quantity of the wastewater. We are able to achieve this for zero electricity in this nature-based system.
You know, when you start to realize with problems as big as climate change or wastewater pollution, there's only so much that one person, one group, one state can do.
Think about this is a ubiquitous problem, and wrap your head around why it's important to solve it.
Around the country, there are similarities in terms of we desperately need funding. We need more federal oversight on these things.
There's a need to educate policymakers and also just educate and kind of open doors of creativity. So it's exciting to try to move past describing the problem and work towards having a solution.
I think ultimately the outcome that I'm looking for most is that communities and people will get safe access to services. Close this access gap that we have.
Oh, sorry. Okay, we can take a quick coffee break. So yeah, feel free to grab a coffee, tea, take a bathroom break, and we will regroup in about 5 minutes. Thanks, everyone.
I want to give a brief shout out, if I could, to, we have people online. We have over 20 people online, but we also have members from the EPA, Hudson Slay and Lily Lee. We have advisory board member Ted Boland. We have Director of Environmental Protection, Ramsey Mansour on the Big Island. Janelle Pang from Pictor, Hannah Shipman from the Maui County, Mahina, a board member, Travis Liggett, who's part of our Ma'alai group. So just a big shout out to those folks for being here. But now, before we break out into our groups, we have the really distinct pleasure of having our friend and supporter, Senator Chris Lee. And as I mentioned earlier, Chris and I traveled to Beijing to be part of the Reinvented Toilet Expo over there. And he has really just been very farsighted for someone very young. He's made national headlines and been invited to the White House to talk about how he led efforts to make Hawaii one of the leaders in the country, the first state to pledge to do 100% renewable energy by 2045, and 100% carbon neutrality. And so he's going to continue leading with these efforts as well. Let's give him a big round of applause. Chris Lee.
Just going to change your background so you don't have the toilet picture.
Thanks. Thanks, Stuart, for that was, whoa, let's lower the bar. that was a lot of pressure. But first of all, thanks everybody for having me. You know, you did mention Beijing though, and I did want to start there just for a minute, because I've been to Beijing twice. Once was with Stuart. The other time was for clean energy and climate work. And if anyone hasn't been to Beijing, it's very dirty. The time that I got, skies were gray. You drive down the highway, it's like you're in LA driving past all the refineries. It's just not, it's not Hawaii, that's for sure. But the second time I was there with Stuart, we were there with the Gates Foundation. And there were a couple things to take away from this conference. And this is something that happened a few years ago. The first was, we were sitting there and Bill Gates himself had opened the conference, and it's a fairly large conference room. It's just packed wall to wall. All the media is there throughout the country. And in his speech, Mr. Gates is talking about this problem we have with poop and everything else, and literally holds up a glass jar with a human sample. And the takeaway from that was kind of amazing. Wasn't just that he was doing that, but it was turning to his executive assistant who was sitting near us and hearing her story about being asked the night before to procure said sample and figure out how to get it to him for this talk, which is sort of mind-blowing when you think about it. But secondly, the big takeaway that was kind of amazing was, this is a conference that really had come out of almost nowhere, just a few years of work by the Gates Foundation, seeding this conversation, getting companies engaged, getting startups engaged that have come from zero to fully fledged products that are innovative and stuff that hadn't really been seen before in this context. And that's something that was just incredible, that kind of turnaround, to see that industry just step up to the plate like that. And granted, not all of them were commercially viable, the very next year, but a lot of them had broken ground where none had come before, which was really cool. For me, the really big takeaway from all of this was actually not what was happening in the conference, but what happened outside. Because we walked out in the middle of Beijing, the same city that I'd just been to, and the sky is blue, driving down the highway just a year apart from the other trip. Those highways are lined with trees, fully grown trees, both sides for miles. All of that was done just in that year. Turns out the sky was a situation where government had clamped down and said, we're going to shut down the factories for a little bit because we have some important events going on in the city. But the fact that society there could do that with both private industry and the government, making that kind of significant systemic change to radically change that environment, to plant millions, literally millions of trees throughout the city in the course of 12 months. That kind of change is what everybody walked away from that conference, I think, with a new perspective on what's possible. And so when we talk about these issues, 88,000 cesspools here in Hawaii, wastewater issues that rival Long Island and other places that have come before, to think that it's impossible to do something about this is just silly. But also to see that we do have the power to act. That's something that we have to take advantage of. We almost have an obligation, I think, to do, because this isn't a problem that's insurmountable. We don't have problems with a lack of technology. We don't have a problem with lack of resources here in this country compared to many others around the world. We have innovative companies, many of which we've heard from, that are doing great stuff, that are doing things that are opening pathways to innovation, to solving these problems with wastewater that didn't exist 5-10 years ago, much less a generation ago, when we talked about cesspools as the cheapest only option in many places. And we're here in Hawaii, where we have a government which can't solve all our problems,
but which can help and at least clear the way and allow our private sector partners to innovate, to step up to the plate. To the gentlemen and the folks who were talking before about needing that just a little bit more breathing room with government regulations, with Department of Health regulations, needing just a little bit more resources to partner with, to do some studies and analysis to help fund matching grants for the kinds of installations that we know need to happen. Yeah, we can do that. I'm here on behalf of the government, at least the legislative branch, to say we can absolutely change our laws where necessary. We can absolutely appropriate funds where necessary. And it seems like this is a necessary cause. So I'm here to say today, we're here to partner with you guys. Just tell us what to do. We need to know where we can invest. We need to know what we need to change. This is one of the biggest problems, I think, to Stuart's point, that has gone unacknowledged by the general public, but yet can have a significant impact not only on our shorelines, on our reefs, our fresh water supply, tourism, everything. So here we are with the opportunity. We have the folks in the room. We have technology, we have resources, we have backing from all the stakeholders that we need. Tell us what to do. We've already come this far on clean energy and climate issues. We're well on our way. That's created thousands of jobs. It's reduced electricity prices here in Oahu by 20%. We're setting a model for the rest of the country. We can do the exact same thing right here. So I'm here to say thank you guys for stepping up to the plate. Thank you for doing what you're doing, because government can't do it. I can't do it, but we can together. So in this next breakout section, please just let us know what it is you guys need. Might not be able to deliver all of it, but we can deliver enough to make sure that it happens. And with your help, we can get there. This is our future, all of us. So this is our opportunity. This is the challenge we face together. Let's do it. Thanks, everybody.
Matt, okay, Matt. All right, everybody, if you can give your attention, you can stay where you are and just give your attention to, and if you could stand up, that would be awesome. We're going to start on this table, and this was finance, right?
Yeah, our discussion topic was finance.
Okay, folks.
We had a pretty cool discussion on tackling finance issues. One of the few of the key points that we talked about were having this, the cesspools need to be converted by the year 2050, and most people will try to delay that as long as possible. So if you can have a way to incentivize people to get that done earlier, so having funds available, more funds available earlier, and then that they will decrease over time, so that would be like, oh, we're going to miss out on this vote, we need to get on these funds. Yeah. And a couple of other ones would be landowner responsibility. So to put it on people to take the responsibility to large landowners.
Yeah. To do the work up front. Yeah, the large landowners, we won't name names, but that will actually front the work and then have it either amortized over time or use the federal money to recoup those costs.
And then the other aspect that we talked about too was having a program to make the process for permitting a lot more efficient, so that there's less time in the review process, and with less time, there's less cost for contractors and vendors that are involved. And yeah, there was, we had a very fruitful discussion, and I think.
Yeah.
A couple more points are sort of pushing a lot of work of trying to run through these programs, all these different federal and state programs. So the contractors is what worked in solar. So right now, the homeowner doesn't have to go through 20 different applications themselves. Contractors are doing that on their behalf. So having a similar type of package is really going to go a long way toward incentivizing individual homeowners, multifamily homeowners, wherever else, in doing this, and having the contractors actually be partners and trying to do that. The other point I would just add is, like, I don't know that the federal money is critical right now, because the feds aren't gonna come in at the outset, like, let's say the feds say, I love this work, and we wanna give you $1 billion, they don't show up with $1 billion check, they want reimbursements. So y'all are gonna have to figure out how to get, $250 million worth up front to pay the contractors to do the work, to actually get to the work on the back. So one of the things that Hawaii has done that's been pretty innovative is the on-roof solar programs, or GEMS. Using that type of program, so having a bond structure that's actually used as capital up front to do the work that then can be used to do the work, pay the contractors, and on the back end, be repaid because it makes federal and state sources. I think without that type of innovation, and without front loading that, figuring out where the money is today rather than the subsidies of the future, it's going to be hard to get any work done today and incentivize contractors to do this work instead of whatever there is doing currently.
Yeah, thank you for that. And where did you say where it was being done successfully?
What is
I thought, did you cite a specific place?
No, well, there's a state program called GEMS.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And we just passed, just so you all know, one of the laws that we passed this last legislative session allows for it to go through a PACE program that's very similar to the solar model that he was discussing. It was only for commercial buildings, but there's still a lot of commercial buildings that have cesspools, so that would apply. And then we're going to try to have a working group and have that go over to residential. So that's a good point. The solar model is good. And to both of your points, the large landowners are going to be critical. We need them to step up, and you all know them in this room. We need their leadership. All right, we'll go back to Dennis's table.
Hopefully this isn't too politically incorrect, but what do women in toilet paper have in common?
Oh, Dennis, you are a brave man. Oh.
Well, they both have to deal with a lot of crap.
Okay. Good turnaround.
All right. 2 comments. I've met with investors on the solar program. The issue becomes default, risk, and profit. And there's not enough numbers to make it worthy for those outside investors or third parties to want to invest at this point in time. But it is, we've talked specifically about that solar lease model and bringing that to cesspools in replacement. 2, reviews, maybe you're talking DPP. I get mine reviewed in 3 days. I can, as an engineer, it's not long. We get approvals like that. So the review process is not a problem.
Yeah.
What's that?
I think I got it.
So we had, Chris, I need $750,000 to go to WRRC to fund this study. Okay, so we need research-specific pilot studies that will answer these questions so we can give it to the agencies for a decision. One, I think Stuart highlighted earlier in the week, the same thing, which is the training and workforce development and technical skills, which we're going to definitely need in the industry, and that's going to need some outside funding. Wastewater literacy, ongoing outreach community is a necessity so that we can keep this moving forward. The other one, which I think is a big one, is in maintaining these cesspool priorities, DOH or the agency needs a special section or a special person dedicated specifically to this. They can't be on the wastewater branch. They've got too many day-to-day responsibilities to make this happen and work. And then lastly is to kind of back to your points is we need to leverage partnerships with others in order with federal agencies or to be able to get those paybacks and to get those financial solutions.
All right, mahalo. Thank you for your feedback. All right. We should be clapping after each one of these. Yes, sorry.
Okay, I'll kick things off and then we'll have a few people adding here. But so we talked about policy and a lot of what we talked about actually echoed what the first table talked about, incentivizing early adoption, phasing in, incrementally increasing fees so that the sooner you do it, you're better off. We also looked at it's important to frame the fee accordingly. For example, describing it as be no more than a standard sewer fee, but then also spreading it across the entire landscape. We need to rally advocates, including potential advocates within real estate. It might be very spotty, but we do need to push back from some other outside forces that might be pushing in the opposite direction. Let's see. We talked about perhaps a property tax credit, but that might be difficult because that's a county sort of county kuleana, so to speak. And then also mandating it as a disclosure when you're selling your property. Like we have this sewer liability that you have to take. Just framing it as a disclosure puts a negative on it. It's not something that you can hide, but certainly there's a benefit to having taken care of it before a sale. As the value and was there more out?
Not much, but we talked about potentially linking the fee payers to some form of funding or funding mechanism to kind of sweeten the deal of having to become a new fee payer. We also talked about the conversion at point of sale for a property is probably something that holds up some sales or complicates them. And if this point of sale conversion bill went through, maybe it could be integrated into the real estate process in a more seamless way so that people see it as a benefit, or agents specifically see it as a benefit to make their deals more streamlined and seamless in the future. And then finally, Paul brought up a great term, cost neutral conversion, potentially either recouping your fees through some form of annual tax credits, which I know have been raised in the past, or even being able to buy back your fees to use them for conversion at some point, or if you convert by a certain year, being eligible to get your fees back, whereas everyone else has an increasing fee with time or something like that.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the whole team.
Yes.
Yeah, does anyone else?
Yeah, and just to show you how valuable this feedback is, last year at this convening, Kelly King, was at a table with Chris Lee, and they were talking about like cesspool owners are the only ones who are not paying into the system, right? And they're the biggest source of the problem. And so we've got to fix that. That's just a disparity that can't continue to exist. But state lawmakers, especially in election year, don't want to be the ones saying we're going to levy fees on people who've never had to pay these fees before. And so he came up with the ingenious idea of the state passes a law, and this will be one of our bills going forward. It went in this past legislative session, but the state authorizes the counties to charge the fees, because the counties are the ones that already do the water fees anyway. So it's a better fit for the counties. And then the state can say, we're just giving the authority to the counties. That came out of a discussion last year at this table over here, and we're going to move that forward. We think it's a really strong measure. So your input definitely does help. I just want to let you know that these can translate into bills. Eric, we'll pivot to you.
All right, I'm pretty sure among my table, I understand this lease. So I'm going to rely very heavily on my table mates. I'm definitely going to rely very heavily on this cocktail. We did talk about federal funding, unlocking federal funding with partners in EPA and USDA, trying to sort out how DOH can more effectively access federal funds. I think Sarah's the person, by the way. Your point is well taken. And so there needs to be some kind of cash flow up front to kind of get us going. There's a fee idea. Certainly there's a revolving fund. John talked quite a bit about that from Suffolk County. There was also discussion, as you guys did, around the natural pinch points, particularly when houses are sold, that you can't even in Suffolk County, you can't even sell your home until you fix the Regardless, I think there was a lot of talk around, creating that sense of urgency to get us on a more steady cadence toward meeting that goal in 2050. So, one thing I think we're seeing, particularly with your hotspots now, which is pretty cool, is that all of these areas that are hotspots are not equal in terms of income level. And so we can prioritize potentially, and start with those and move forward that way too. I would say also, we did talk a little bit about kind of a private equity model that might work with Bill's experience, and I think this is maybe through the perspective of a regular solution, but can work generally where if private equity firms might be attracted to these kinds of projects where if they're laying sewer pipe in front of homes, that shows up on their balance sheet. That's an investment program with return. Particularly, Bill mentioned, if you're doing directional drilling for a 2-inch pipe in front of homes, you can also lay fiber optics at the same time. That is a big win for them. And then we seek, various funding approaches to get homes to hook up to the line.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything? Everything?
The one thing I'd say that we all have to do, there's a PR campaign that we need to run. It's like, I'm shrill about this subject. Whenever I think about it, it makes me crazy. And when I see the DOH closing down beaches and other things, I say to myself, that's because somebody's pooping in the water. Excuse me. But I don't think everybody does. And I think we need to raise some money and do a really good PR campaign about this problem. So that people are embarrassed about it that are here. Not just everybody in the room, everybody. And all these solutions start to work when you have that. The big landowners might be something, as some of you know, I used to manage a big landowner, and I will tell you, I closed a large capacity cesspool. I didn't know what that was 15 years ago. But I got a letter from the EPA that said if we didn't close it in 6 months, I was going to pay $1,000 a day. I knew what that was. And it wasn't a building that our company built. It was a leased property. And there was a lot of community hoo-ha about closing down the building because of low income housing. But we did it. That's fine. And we need some enforcement, and we need the 2050 goal needs to be moved forward.
And the good news about the 2050 goal is that in the cesspool conversion working group, we're wrapping up this year in the next few months, and we're pretty much unanimous that that's one of the first things that we'll have earlier deadlines for priority areas for conversion. So that is going to be coming down the line. It's something we still have to run through the legislature to vote through. So if you can, I think the PR campaign is huge. We have to get everybody on board. That's what they did in Suffolk County and Long Island. And people were like, this is about clean water. People's dogs were drinking out of ponds and dying in these multi-million-dollar homes in Long Island. Then that got people's attention. So we really just have to get on the same page about clean water. You'll have final thoughts and we'll go to the next table.
Yeah, so the quantification of understanding there's a deadline in 2050. But if you're not converting X number of cesspools every year, right? Maybe the policy should be reviewed that you're already out of compliance. Because I mean, in 2023, you have 27 years. Divide that into 88,000. That's like 3,500 cesspools a year. That should be being converted. So I don't know that it might be a way to look at the compliance. So that everybody's not just focused on like 2048. Right?
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. All right. James.
In the technology groups, we're all about efficiency, so we merged into a single group. Basically, what we discussed was the merit of tackling the cesspool replacements with solutions on a community by community basis, not a completely ad hoc property by property solution basis. So that in a given community, whether you have on-site systems on serving individual homes or larger decentralized solutions serving the entire community, it simplifies the maintenance process and then workforce development process if you have some homogeneity within that community. And then we moved on to discussing how communities should go about selecting solutions. And we basically settled on the fact that information had to come from a couple different places. First of all, you had to go to the community and you have to compile what they want for a solution, what they want in a solution. Do they want to be a wastewater operator? Do they want a system in their backyard? Do they want to be reusing water on their properties? Would they rather not have to deal with wastewater at all, have that solution be off the property? So go to the communities and figure out what their priorities are, and then also go to vendors and get from them what their solution for individuals' communities would be, what it would look like, how much it would cost. And then from there, that's when you would take the step and go to a consultant to kind of refine those designs. But the importance of going to those first two locations before you go to the consultant, so you don't necessarily just get the solution that the consultant is used to using, but the solution that works best for the community.
Great. Thank you. James, I expected more poo puns from you, but we'll get those during the break. And then we have, did your group, we're going to report out as well over here, or were you all just part of the one? Okay, got it. You guys were efficient. And then Yoko is going to report out for those online.
Yeah, again, shout out to the people who are sitting at home, not getting coffee breaks already made for them. They have to make their own coffee. So thanks for staying on for the breakout rooms to the people on Zoom. But yeah, we had 2 breakout rooms on Zoom, one with policy, one with finance. The policy one listed for priorities, infrastructure investment, water quality protection, and workforce development. The roadblocks identified is that it's expensive. There are community concerns regarding homeowner costs and a need for education on effects of groundwater. And the strategies are the revolving funds for larger expenses, grants for cesspool owners, education on impacts to groundwater. Then they specifically listed bridge to reefs, barrier to garden, presentation to schools, and pilot programs to provide support to help with community sentiment. So thanks to the policy group online. And then moving to the finance group, they listed a suggestion or a comment stressing the importance that DOH works with partners such as NGOs, commercial and other government entities to prevent silos, and that NGO partners must be able to secure grants and work as pass-through entities for funding. And they stress the need for a long-term sustainable finance model initially based around small pilots that prove feasible. And they also mentioned a green fee that failed in the last legislative session, that must be revisited and ensure that money from tourism is used to protect the waters that are bringing the tourists here to enjoy. So again, thanks for Zoom participants.
All right. Great. Well, this is very productive. We appreciate your input. It is now time to just wrap up, and we have lots of food and many more drinks. If someone is picking you up, tell them to come in and get some food because we have that much food, and we can get to-go boxes as well. I just really want to, if we can put our sponsors back on the page. Actually, Christina, I was trying to get this to where we can put that, that poster back on. Really, just I want to thank, first of all, the WAI team. We've got a really super talented team, starting with Christina, our water quality manager, and Sierra and Shayla. And then, you know, it would be neglectful not to mention our awesome interns for the summer. We've had Soso here, who's taking diligent notes. And we've got Asia, who welcomed you over here. We're delighted to have them this summer. And Yoko, as we mentioned, is going to be leaving. Where is Sierra, by the way? There we are, in the back, yes. So we've got an amazing team. Yoko is going to be leaving us to go back to Germany, despite actually getting on my knees and like literally begging him to stay. But we found a way to keep him attached to WAI. He is going to be the youngest, by far, new board member of our team. It's amazing to have someone so young that has so much knowledge and passion about this issue. So we're really looking forward to keeping him on track and keeping him with us. Also want to thank my partner, John Anner, who helped me fund and found this. And it's just been a great partner, does all our legal and financial back end. And with the grant that we're getting through the earmark request, we'll be stepping up and doing more work. We're looking for more grants so that he can really help us, because he has lots of experience with federal grants. So thank you, John. Yes. Always looking for a way to come back to Hawaii, so we're going to make that happen for it. I want to thank our initial funders. I can't thank you guys enough. At Castle Foundation, they believed in us when we were just, you know, a conception, and realized the need, and they saw our passion and persistence, and so they stepped up early on. The Minjar Family Fund. Also want to thank Ulupono. Keith, if you can raise your hand. We've got Keith DeMello here. Giving them a round of applause. The Castle Ulupono, who've been there from the beginning for us. We have our sponsors, Pacific Current, Closina, and Pictor. We can't thank you guys enough for Chris McNally over there, who just became a grandfather. Yeah. 6 hours ago. That's awesome. And then Dennis is, from Pictor is here, and we've got that big grant that we're looking for more of. And we're also looking for more board members. We need board members that can really help us move this forward, so that we're not just going to grant to survive. We are the only nonprofit that is focused on this issue in the state. This is a $2 to $4 billion problem. So if you have any interest in joining us and working with us, we are definitely taking people to, we need everyone we can get on the same team. I also want to thank our technical sponsors, our technological partners. And we're really just lucky to have super dedicated companies like Elgin that is just paid. I mean, they have just lost money in Hawaii because they're just paying to help, veterans and convert their systems and spending a lot of money. And they're just like, no, this is the right thing to do. Arinco and Ridge to Reefs and Fuji Clean. I mean, we vetted more than 60 companies. And we were looking for the mission-driven ones that are committed to working in Hawaii, building up resources and helping homeowners and donating some of their equipment. And we found amazing partners out of those companies. And then we looked around the world. So I want to thank you all for spending this time here, investing your time and energy, and let's keep this conversation going. Melanie is Melanie from UH Grant. Sea Grant has been a huge sponsor. That's how we got Yoko originally. That's how we got Shayla, who's going to continue. And so we're really, that's my cue. They're like, shut up, we want to drink. So we're going to have a cesspool legislative task force that we had this year. We're very successful. We passed 3 bills. Melanie was on it. A number of you were interested in talking about that. Let's keep that going. We could pass more laws, working with Chris, Representative Nicole Lowen, and others to make this next session really valuable, especially as the cesspool conversion working group's ending. Now is the time to educate people, to get the word out there. But let's give ourselves a round of applause for all the great work that you put in today. And particular shout out for Rachel Solomsauce for traveling from the Big Island, the chancellor of the community college there, that they've been a leader in this effort to do workforce training, and Nancy McPherson from Department of Hawaiian Homelands. We're really hoping, like, we want to get Native Hawaiians on the land, and you have to have the wastewater systems. That's the first thing you need to take care of. So we are hoping to work together to really make that happen and get more folks on the land this year. We've got tons of food and we've got more drinks. So let's celebrate the good work we did today, and mahalo again for all your great work.